All right, good morning, counsel. Back on the record in the Simpson matter, the defendant is again present with his counsel, Mr. Shapiro, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Douglas, Mr. Bailey, people represented by Ms. Clark, Mr. Darden, Ms. Lewis, and Mr. Goldberg. Jury is not present. Counsel, anything we need to put on the record before we invite the jurors to rejoin us? All right, Deputy McNair, let's have the jurors, please. All right, Detective Furman, would you please resume the witness stand? All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Hope you all had a pleasant weekend. All right, Detective Mark Furman is again on the witness stand. Good morning, Detective.
Good morning, Your Honor.
You're reminded you are still under oath, and Ms. Clark, you may resume with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let's see. I think where we left off on Friday, sir, you were showing the jury the shovel and the plastic and the wood, the piece of wood that you saw near the Bronco. You recall that?
Yes, I do.
Now, first of all, the plastic, you indicated, where did you recover that from? What part of the Bronco? Oh, you didn't recover. Where did you see it?
I saw it in the right side or the passenger side of the rear cargo area along the side of the vehicle cargo area.
And that was it inside something?
It looked like it was in some sort of a pocket.
Okay. You did not recover that item?
No, I didn't.
And did you recover the shovel?
No, I didn't.
Did you recover the wood?
No.
That was left for someone else to recover?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, that plastic, do you happen to know whether it belongs in a Bronco or anything about it?
Well, now I do.
And what is that?
It's the spare tire bag. In other words, when a tire is off the vehicle and it's dirty, you place it in the bag so you can place it in the cargo area.
Okay. And that's standard equipment for a Ford Bronco, is it?
I was told it was, yes.
Yes. What about that shovel? Standard equipment also?
No, I don't believe so, no.
Now, you indicated that you had a conversation with Mr. Kalin in which he informed you about the thumps on the wall. You recall that? What time did he say he heard those thumps?
10:45 p.m.
You, I think you had testified earlier that you brought him into the house with you and put him in the bar area?
Yes, ma'am.
And then what did you do?
Then I walked towards the front door area, which passed the kitchen.
And then what?
I saw Detective Van Adder in the kitchen. I told Detective Van Adder, I said something to the effect of, Phil, talk to this guy at the bar.
Did you tell him what to talk about?
No.
And then what did you do?
I walked out the front door of the residence.
And at that moment that you walked out the front door, sir, did you know where Mr. Simpson was?
No.
Did you have any idea where he had gone the night before?
No.
Or if he'd gone anywhere?
I had no idea, ma'am.
Or when he was due to return?
No.
When you exited the front door, where did you go?
I walked out into the driveway and I looked to my left to see where the property ended.
right. Sir, if you would please step down and show us the route you took when you exited the front door.
All right, Ms. Clark, you're referring to the
People's
diagram.
66, I'm sorry.
People's
66.
66. Thank you.
I exited the front of the house where on this chart it says entrance. I exited going west, I walked onto the driveway, and then looked south.
Now, why did you look south?
Well, from where I had come from in Kalen's room, the wall that he heard the crash of the thump was on the south wall.
And then where did you go?
I walked down the driveway and I started walking down towards the garage. The garage comes somewhat out from the front of the residence. I walked around the garage and went down to the southernmost part of the property, and then I looked to my left, which would be east.
And you looked to your left eastward because, why?
That would have been the direction going back towards Kalen's room.
What happened next?
I saw a pathway. It looked very narrow and dark, and there was a cyclone fence that ran along the southern property line with, it looked like plants from the residence to the south that had overgrown towards the Simpson residence.
And were there any gates there?
I believe there was a gate that was broken at some point in here. I believe it might have been here. I think it was laid up against some, I can't remember what debris it was there, what was there, but it was there.
So it was not closed, the gate?
No.
And so what did you do? Where'd you go?
Well, I took out my flashlight and I started walking down the path, trying to figure out the residence architecture, to figure out where Kalen's wall might have been.
Now, what were you able to see from that first gate area in terms of farther down the walkway? What were you able to see?
Well, I could see there was a long walkway, but it seemed that this was a little elevated, so I was looking somewhat downward. I saw a long path, a long dark path covered with leaves.
And what did you expect to find?
I didn't know. I thought possibility that somebody had collapsed back there.
And why did you think that?
By Kalen's statement, it was rather odd, the thump on the wall, nothing that followed up. Plus what I observed on the Bronco that was parked on Rockingham, and the inability to raise anybody in the residence. That was our concerns at that time.
Okay. So what were you able to see from the vantage point of that first gate area going down? Anything?
Nothing really.
Was it, can you describe the lighting in that area?
Well, the lighting outside was getting light outside, but it was even worse lighting back here. It was very shaded. These trees or shrubs caused it to be darkened, and then all these buildings were much higher than, about the same height as the trees at some point, sometimes higher.
So did you need the aid of your flashlight in order to see where you were going?
Not so much to see where I was walking, but mostly just to look for anything that I might have walked on. I was using it, it wasn't that powerful. So
What kind of, that was that little flashlight?
I had 2 AA batteries and a small maglite.
And then where did you go after you reached that first gate area?
I got to this area and I was kind of confused by this indentation. I looked in this area, but I couldn't see anything that would really indicate that this is where the noise was from. I walked back out here in this area.
Okay. For the record,
There was another gate in here somewhere, but I'm not sure if it was open.
for the record, when the witness said this area, he was referring to the behind the garage area, the entire area on People 66 that is indented. That would be just to the right of the garage area. And then you recall a second gate.
I believe so. It was also open,
Not locked.
not locked.
And what were you able to see when you got to the second gate area, in terms of farther down the walkway?
Then I was, as far as further down the walkway, I hadn't been able to see anything farther down the walkway. I was looking at this architecture in here where it's beginning to come back out adjacent to the path.
Why don't you have a seat? Another board condition to the defense has to be marked Peoples 116.
All right, Peoples 116 next in order, which is a chart. Can I ask the court TV person to give me a look at it, please?
Okay, I guess you're going to have to sit down.
Okay.
Directing your attention, sir, to Peoples 116, the photograph labeled A. Tell us what's depicted in that photograph.
Photograph A is the front of the garage. This is facing due west. I walked along the path, came out in front of the garage, and walked to this entrance right here and looked east down the path.
For the record, when the witness indicated this entrance, he's pointing to the area to the right of the right-hand side of the garage as you face the photograph.
Appears to be the south portion of the garage.
That's right, thank you. And photograph B?
Photograph B would be, this is the air conditioner that's jutting out with the bracing. This wall line here, I believe, is the beginning of the building, the bungalows, where I believe the outside of Cato's wall. Maybe the office that's just adjacent to Cato's wall.
Okay, before we get to those, let me ask you a couple more.
392, can you see everything there? Does the where the attorneys are standing? All right. Anybody in the jury who can't see, let me know, please. Thank you.
Now, you said you passed through the second gate area,
Yes.
and what were you able to see when you got to the area of the second gate?
Well, I was looking, initially I was looking up trying to figure out the where the wall was. I looked up, I saw a sheer wall that went up quite a ways, like 15, maybe as high as 20 feet. And the pitch of the roof went directly back in towards the pool area. And I recalled that from when I was on the other side. And I determined that that was probably Cato's wall.
So, as you were looking then at the outside of the residence, you were trying to determine what wall matched up with the outside of Cato's room?
Yes.
And what time was it, if you recall, when you exited the house and went down that south pathway?
6:10, 6:15.
Were you looking at your watch when you went out of the house?
No, ma'am.
You're estimating for us?
Yes.
And then after you passed through the second gate area, you saw the wall that appeared to match Cato's wall.
Yes.
Then what happened?
I continued walking down the path, and when I got approximately 15 or 20 feet away, I saw a dark object. I continued to walk forward towards that object.
Could you tell what that dark object was?
No, not until I got very close.
And how close did you get before you could tell what it was?
several feet, 3 or 4, I'm not sure. At some point, I could tell that it was a glove.
And when you saw that it was a glove, first of all, where did you see it in relationship to the air conditioner shown in People's B and C?
Here's the air conditioner,
People's B, in the B?
and I looked down, and there is the dark object that I saw.
And for the record, the witness is pointing to what looks like a small dark spot right next on the ground near the air conditioner in photograph B. And in photograph C, can you see it?
It's rather dark, but I believe that here's the air conditioner bracing, and then I believe this is, it's really hard to see right here. This looks like the object that I saw, yes.
And for the record, the witness has pointed to 2 pieces of wood sticking out of the wall in the top of photograph C as when he referred to the bracing for the air conditioner and a dark spot underneath on the
Ms.
ground.
Clark, excuse me, Ms. Clark, do you wish to move that exhibit further down momentarily so the jurors on the other end of the box can see that?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. That's a good idea.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Ms. Clark.
Thank you. In photograph D, sir, can you tell us what you see there?
Photograph D is a picture of what now I identified as a possible glove. This was probably about the distance, maybe a little farther back, that I could tell it was probably a glove.
And when you were able to tell that it was probably a glove, what did you do?
Well, I walked closer to look at it.
Okay. How close did you get to it?
I got probably as close as photo F, looking down at it.
And what, did you just stand and look down at it? Or did you touch it? What did you do?
I didn't touch it, I looked at it, I didn't know what the significance of it was.
Go ahead, take your seat. Can you pull up? Can you pull up? Excuse me.
Ms. Clark, are you going to continue to use this?
Yes, I'm going to
All
go
right.
back and forth.
Fine.
Keep my voice up. Can you please describe the appearance of the glove, sir?
Well, it appeared to be, it didn't match the terrain. There's leaves all over the walkway. It was dirty in the area. It was unkept. This glove didn't have any signs of dirt or leaves or twigs on it. It appeared a dark leather glove. It appeared to be somewhat moist or sticky. I didn't touch it, but it appeared that parts were sticking to other parts of the glove.
And you were describing the walkway area. You indicated it was kind of dirty with leaves. Were you able to see any footprints or shoe prints or disturbance in those leaves?
No, I didn't.
Can you describe, was it very thickly covered with leaves? What did it look like?
Well, much as this picture depicts in this photo, that was much of the way the walkway looked.
And when you look back, could you see where you had just walked on the walkway?
No.
So after you got up to the glove, you indicate you looked down at it. What happened next?
Well, at that point, I was somewhat alarmed at not of finding something such as this and not knowing if a suspect or a victim had left something back there. So I continued farther east past the air conditioner.
Let me back up 1 second. Could you tell whether that was a right or left-handed glove when you looked at it at that time?
It appeared to be a right-handed glove.
And did it, what significance did you attach to it when you saw it, if any?
Well, it looked similar to the glove on the Bundy scene.
Did you immediately think it was a match? What was your state of mind about that?
Oh, I didn't know at that point. It was a dark-colored leather glove.
Okay. And after you saw that glove, did you pick it up?
No.
What did you do?
I walked around it. I continued eastbound on the walkway.
Did anything draw your attention as you passed the area of the glove and continued down the walkway?
Yes.
And what was that?
I started hitting spider webs or cobwebs in my face.
And had you hit any spider webs or cobwebs up until the point where you saw the glove?
No.
So what did you do next? You continued down the walkway?
Yes, ma'am.
And why?
Well, I didn't know if I had someone that had gone all the way down the walkway, whether it be a suspect or a victim. I didn't know their condition. And at that point, I didn't want to turn my back on anyone that might be watching me.
And what did you see?
I saw nothing. I continued down the walkway to the end of the building, where there was a large area of budding plants and shrubbery. I concluded it might have been where gardeners start small plants.
So is that the, where is that area located with respect to the house and the walkway?
It would be in the southeast corner.
At the back of the house?
Yes.
So you went all the way back there?
Yes.
What did you think you were going to find back there?
I was looking for somebody that had collapsed and gone back to that area, and quite possibly was lying there.
Even though you felt cobwebs, spider webs on the way back?
Well, I didn't know. I wasn't crawling, so I didn't know exactly what had transpired there.
Were you walking straight up, standing up?
Pretty much, yes.
I mean, as opposed to bent over?
I could have been bent over at some times. Some of the overhanging leaves, or the tree, I think some of the time there was branches in the way, so I could have been leaning over some of the time.
Perhaps we ought to note how tall the detective is.
Right. And you felt the cobwebs where? On your face, on your shoulders, can you tell us?
Yes, on my face, and initially on my face. I went underneath the air conditioner.
And how tall are you?
6'3".
Okay. When you got to the rear of the location, you saw that area. And was it like a dirt area back there?
Somewhat. There was plants, and there was wild grass, and there was some shrubbery, and there was some plants that looked like they might have been taken care of or planted there on purpose.
Did you look around?
Yes.
What did you, other than what you've just described, did you see anything else?
I found no evidence of anyone being there or any evidence of anybody leaving something in that area, so I left.
And where did you go?
I walked back up the path westbound, and I went to the front of the residence, and I located Detective Phillips.
Now, when you first went back on that walkway, did you know whether Cato had already gone back there to investigate the thumps on the wall?
No, I didn't.
And you walked back out?
Yes.
And when you walked back out, sir, can you indicate what area you stepped out of, where you stepped out of the walkway? Is there a photograph that shows where you came out?
I believe so, yes.
66?
Yes.
Which one is that? You don't have to get down if you don't need to.
That would be photo A?
Photo A? That same entrance area that you indicated earlier, sir?
Yes.
And what did you do at that time?
I walked north or back towards the front of the residence, and I saw Detective Phillips in front of the kitchen TV room area.
And what was he doing in front of the kitchen TV area?
I just saw him standing there. I don't know his reason for coming out there or what he was doing. I just asked to talk to him.
Next in order 117 has been shown to the defense, a photograph of the house.
People 117.
Showing you People's 117, sir. You've indicated just now that you, when you came out from the south pathway, that you went towards the house where you saw Detective Phillips.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you see the area in People's 117 where you saw Detective Phillips standing?
Yes.
And where's that?
There's a first story window facing the camera, almost center. It would have been in that paved area.
Can you direct the pointer?
Yes.
You're going to have to look at the screen. Tell me if you can see the red dot.
Up.
Okay,
And now a big circle right in that area.
right here.
Right, well, a little to the right where that walkway is that goes to the door. Yes, right in
Right
that
there?
area.
All right. Was he standing outside, sir?
Yes.
And what, did you have a conversation with him?
Somewhat. I just told Ron I'd like to show him something.
Did you tell him what you wanted to show him?
No.
Why not?
I wanted to see his impression. He made similar observations on the Bundy scene that I had, and I wanted to see what he thought of what I had discovered on the pathway.
What did you do then?
I took Detective Phillips down that pathway and showed him.
Okay. And was that, did you take the same route as you had earlier?
I didn't delay in certain areas, but yes.
So this time you just walked straight back there?
Yes.
And when you say delay in certain areas, what are you referring to?
Well, the indentation on the side of the house, there was a large amount of area there that I walked into that area to orient myself. I didn't do that this time.
And when you took Detective Phillips out, how close did you get to the glove?
We stood just to the west of it, kneeling down.
You were kneeling down?
Yes.
Was Detective Phillips kneeling down?
I don't recall. I just knelt down. That's a narrow path. I just knelt down so he could also observe and pointed.
And after you showed it, did Detective Phillips touch the glove?
No.
Did you touch the glove?
No.
What happened next?
We returned to the front of the residence, and I'm not sure if I entered the residence or Detective Phillips sent Detective Van Adder, but I believe I at some point talked to Detective Van Adder and Lang, and I took Detective Van Adder back to the location.
And what route did you take with Detective Van Adder?
The same as Detective Phillips.
And how close did you get to the glove with Detective Van Adder?
It was similar. We approached the glove just to the west of it, observed it, and then turned around and walked back.
And did you touch the glove at that time?
No.
Did Detective Van Adder?
No.
And after you both saw the glove, where did you go?
We returned to the front of the residence.
And then what did you do?
I believe we entered the kitchen area and contacted Detective Lang, and I brought him down to the same location.
And what did you do with Detective Lang?
The same as the two other detectives. Led him down to the glove, showed him what I had observed, and we returned.
And did Detective Lang touch the glove?
No.
Did you touch the glove?
No.
When you came back out with Detective Lang, what happened next?
Detective Lang and Van Adder were involved in conversation, and I believe I stood away from that, so I'm not exactly positive what the conversation entailed.
Okay. Why did you not involve yourself in their conversation?
Well, this was their crime scene, so they were discussing what had been found and if it ain't anything, what it meant.
Now, at some point, did you have a conversation with Detective Phillips about where the defendant was?
I don't recall. I had learned of it, yes, but I'm not sure exactly when. I know it was after I returned with all the detectives, but I don't know exactly when.
What do you mean when you say after you returned with all the detectives?
After I came back from the path and notified Detective Phillips, sometimes after I showed all the detectives what I had found on the path, I learned of conversations that have been involved with Mr. Simpson.
So at the time that you found the glove, you still did not know where he was or where he'd gone or when he'd gone there?
No,
And when I say he, I'm referring to Mr. Simpson.
that's correct.
So is it your current recollection then, sir, based on what you tell us, that you learned that the defendant was where the defendant was at some point after all detectives were taken back to see the glove?
Yes.
All right, after Detective Lang and Detective Van Adder had that conversation, what happened next?
Thereabouts, sometime, Detective Van Adder told Detective Phillips and myself to go back to Bundy to look at that glove that we had seen on Bundy,
And for what purpose, sir?
to see if there was a similarity, if we had a right and a left, see if the color and the leather and the lining matched.
And so after Detective Van Adder asked you to do that, did you?
Yes, Detective Phillips and I left the Rockingham scene and went back to Bundy.
In the same car you guys came in earlier?
Yes,
You drove together, did you?
yes.
And what time was it when you went back to Bundy?
I believe about 7 in the morning, maybe a little later.
Again, were you looking at your watch when you left Rockingham to go back to Bundy?
No, I wasn't.
Is that an approximation, sir?
Yes.
And when you went back to Bundy, what did you do?
Detective Phillips instructed me to get a photographer. I did. We walked down Dorothy, entered the alley, and came in through the rear of the residence.
Anytime I hear Bundy.
Yeah.
People's Exhibit number 55. Two, please. We through this exhibit here.
Ms. Clark?
We will be shortly. All right, sir. When Detective Phillips asked you to go and get a photographer, did you do that?
Yes, I did.
And what was the purpose of that?
To photograph the glove in its original position, and if I needed to move it to inspect it any further, we could, in other words, photo it as we originally found it.
And who is this in the photograph, sir?
That is victim Brown and myself.
And are you pointing to something underneath that bush?
Yes, I am.
And what is that?
To the glove on Bundy.
And is that the photograph that you took the photographer over to take at the direction of Detectives Van Adder and Phillips?
Yes.
Are you dressed here? You recall testifying earlier that you'd taken your jacket off at some point when you were at Bundy earlier.
Yes.
Had you ever put it on again between that point and this point here?
No, I had not.
So at the time that you found the glove at Rockingham, what were you wearing?
I was wearing exactly what's in this photo, a white shirt, tan slacks,
Do you still have
loafers.
that? I'm sorry?
loafers,
Loafers?
shoes.
Shoes. And do you still have that clothing, sir?
Yes, I do.
The shirt and the pants?
Yes.
And so are you still dressed in the same manner in this photograph being shown to the jury now as you were when you found the glove at Rockingham?
Yes.
After that photograph was taken, sir, what happened next?
I returned to the Rockingham address
And for what purpose did you return to the Rockingham address?
to inform the detectives what I saw at Bundy.
Now, before you left for Rockingham again, when you went over to the glove on Bundy, sir, what did you do? You were asked, I think you testified earlier, to compare it to the one at Rockingham to determine whether it would look the same
Yes.
and a match.
Yes.
What did you do in order to make sure of that?
Well, I had to determine if it was a right or a left, and I did. It was a left-handed glove.
At Bundy?
Yes. It appeared to be the same texture of leather, same color. The fabric, a mesh fabric, was the lining inside. It appeared to be the same texture, design, and color as the glove on Rockingham.
Did you touch the glove?
No.
Did you move it?
Yes.
How'd you do that?
With a pen?
With a pen, like the kind you write with?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have the ink part out?
No.
And what did you do that for?
I just lifted it and turned it so I could tell if it was a right or a left, and to look at the lining.
And was there someone else present when you did that?
Yes.
Who?
The photographer, I believe he was Mr. Rokar.
Okay. And how did that assist you in determining whether it was a right or a left?
Excuse me?
How did that help you? Lifting it with the pen, how did that help you determine if it was a right or a left?
Well, I wanted to see where the thumb was.
Were you able to see where the thumb was without doing that?
I might have been able to, but I wanted to make sure.
And why did you want to make sure? Why were you getting this information?
Well, I was being directed to do this, and I felt there was probably a very important reason why, and I wanted to be sure.
And so you were going to report back to Detective Van Adder?
Yes.
And after that was done, sir, you indicated that you went back to Rockingham?
Yes.
Did you go by yourself?
Yes, I did.
Did you ask anyone to follow you or proceed there as well?
Yes.
Who was that?
The photographer.
And for what purpose?
To photograph the other glove, and for whatever other reason Detective Van Adder and Lang wanted him at Rockingham.
Now, after you lifted put your pen inside to lift the glove at Bundy, did you replace it in the same location
Yes.
as it was found?
Yes.
You went to Rockingham then and you took the photographer?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of that?
To document the position of the glove on the pathway that I had discovered earlier.
And what did you do in that regard when you got to Rockingham with the photographer?
I believe I was instructed to show him where the glove was and so he could photograph it, and he did.
Did you take him down that south pathway?
Yes.
And again, what route did you take to take him down there?
The same as the other three detectives, eastbound on the path to the glove, just west of the glove, and he photographed it.
And so are these photographs, are any of these photographs the ones that were taken in your direction with the photographer at Rockingham? When I say these, I'm referring to People's 116.
I'm not sure, I don't believe we had any numbers at that time.
And photograph E, where there is no number, then like that is one of the photographs taken in your direction by Mr. Roper?
Yes.
All right, and after at that time, did you touch that glove?
No.
Did Mr. Rokar touch that glove?
No.
After he took photographs, what did you do?
We returned to the front of the residence.
Now, when you pointed the glove out to Mr. Rokar for the purpose of taking photographs, did you point out aspects of the glove that you wanted him to take note of in photographs?
No, I believe I just wanted photographs of the glove. I don't think there was anything we could depict that we'd need photos of from any angle.
You described earlier that you noticed the glove to be moist and sticky. Do you recall that?
That's the way it appeared, yes.
Did you notice whether any fingers were stuck together?
I do recall that there was one finger that was stuck to one part of the glove.
All right, what happened next?
I took the photographer back out to the front of the residence, and I re-entered the front door area that led into the kitchen.
And for what purpose?
To tell the detectives, well, I had already previously told them what I had found, but there was a discussion going on, and I came back there to rejoin them.
Now, when you were, let me back up for a second. When you looked at the glove at Rockingham, were you able to tell whether it was right or left-handed?
The glove on Rockingham was a right-handed glove.
And the photograph of it shown in People's 116E, actually D, E, and F. Do those depict the position in which you originally found it?
Yes.
And so we were able to look at the glove and see where the thumb was located without lifting it.
Yes.
Who was inside the kitchen area when you went inside the house after having the glove photographed?
Detective Van Adder, Detective Van Adder for sure. Detective Phillips. That was all I believe I saw when I walked in there.
Did you have any specific instructions then at that point as to what you were to do?
Well, at that point, Detective Van Adder made a statement that we're going to handle the Rockingham address as a crime scene, and we needed to seal it off, secure it.
And what were you asked to do at that point, if anything?
To make sure no one was in the house. There was 2 children in the house. A man that I later found out was Mr. Cowlings. Miss Arnell Simpson was in the house. I think that was all. We asked them if they could take the children somewhere else, that they'd have to leave, that there was some investigation that was going to be done at the house.
And where were you?
At this time, I believe I walked out into the living room area. I think I talked to Mr. Cowlings there. I believe Miss Simpson was somewhere in that general vicinity on the first floor.
Did you remain at Rockingham at that time, sir?
Yes, I did.
And what were you doing?
Waiting for a search warrant to be written.
And who was there with you?
At that point, Detective Van Adder was there momentarily, then he left. There was uniformed officers with the Bronco at the front of the Rockingham gate, uniformed officers to the front of Ashford. Detective Roberts at some point rejoined me at that location. And there was several detectives that ended up there, and I don't recall exactly what time.
Let me back up for 1 minute. You left Rockingham to go back and look at the Bundy glove to see if it matched the one you'd found at Rockingham.
Yes.
When you did that, you went with Detective Phillips, I think you testified?
Yes.
At some point, when you were back at Bundy to compare that glove to the Rockingham glove, do you recall seeing Detective Lang?
I can't remember if I saw him at that point.
When you returned to the Rockingham location, do you recall whether you saw Detective Lang there?
I can't remember. I remember talking to Van Adder because he said we were going to secure this and handle it like a crime scene. And then I started talking to Mr. Cowlings and Miss Simpson.
Then did you remain at Rockingham for the balance of the day?
Yes.
And what was your function there?
To make sure we just kept the location secure, waiting for a warrant to be signed.
Okay. And you were with the uniformed officers and at some point joined by Detective Roberts?
Yes, and then there were several detectives after that.
And at some point in the afternoon, do you recall meeting me?
Yes, I do.
And that was at Rockingham?
Yes.
Was that the first time we met?
Yes, it is.
Did you walk me through the Rockingham location to show where you had found the glove and where you'd contacted Mr. Kalin?
Yes.
How long did you remain at Rockingham?
And that day,
Yes.
I believe it was well past 6 in the evening. I'm not positive on that, but I know it was very late in the afternoon at the earliest.
Do you recall seeing media arrive at the Rockingham location at some point?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately when that was?
It seems that it was right around the noon hour, but I'm not positive.
And at some point, did you put on your jacket?
Yes.
When was that?
When the media arrived,
And why was that?
because that's what we're supposed to do.
In case your boss was watching?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I have nothing further.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a brief recess at this point. Please remember my admonition to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't allow anybody to communicate with you. Also, do not conduct any deliberations till the matter has been submitted to you, and we will reconvene in about 15 minutes. All right? Detective Furman, you may step down. You're ordered to return in 15 minutes. Record in the Simpson matter. All the parties are again present. Counsel, anything we need to take up before we invite the jurors to rejoin us?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Clark.
Well, this is a motion presented by Mr. Bailey.
All right. What I propose we do is, why don't you take a look at it over the noon hour, and we'll take it up. I accept Mr. Bailey's representation off the record that he will not go into those areas today.
But that doesn't address the people's concern. If the court is inclined to rule in defense favor, which the people see no reason for the court to do, we have read the motion and the reasons that generated the motion, and we see no merit to the request. Nevertheless, if the court does intend to rule in the defendant's favor with respect to the parameters of cross-examination, the people are entitled to know about this one before we finish direct, because these were items that the people raised in the people's motion. The court issued a ruling, and based on that, we made a decision as to how we would proceed with direct. If the court is now going to change
Well,
that...
let me, excuse me for interrupting you. Do you want to litigate it now?
Yes.
Okay. I left it on my desk. Ms. Robertson? Thank you. All right, Mr. Bailey, do you wish to be heard?
Yes, Your Honor. You will recall.
No, if the defense wanted Detective Furman present.
All right,
We ask him to
Detective
leave.
Furman, could we ask you to step outside, please? Thank you. All right, record should reflect that Detective Furman has withdrawn from the courtroom. Mr. Bailey.
Your Honor, we have visited this subject on several occasions under the umbrella of the mandate of the Anthony case decided in this district. You had issued a ruling barring certain evidence of statements made to psychiatrists, reports of psychiatrists, in connection with litigation instituted by Mr. Furman in the early 80s claiming a disability because of certain experiences he had had. And at the time that you issued that ruling, it was represented to the court that Mr. Furman would not be a witness to the 1985 incident involving the Mercedes-Benz windshield, and that he would not be involved in the 1989 incident, which in fact went to court. Now, the prosecution opened right up with that. In addition, and this is a first in my experience, they opened up without specifying that he had been subjected to some kind of special training session that had nothing to do with the murders at Bundy or the evidence at Rockingham. And it seems to me that the question of Mr. Furman's global attitudes toward race specifically, and in particular couples that are racially mixed, such as Mr. Simpson and Nicole, is fair game for questioning, inasmuch as he is very definitively a suspect for having carried that glove from Bundy, where he found it, to Rockingham, where he deposited it. And that's what we intend to show by circumstantial evidence far stronger than the people will ever offer against O.J. Simpson on the murders. If motive and opportunity are the means that the people use to prove the guilt of the defendant, which they say they can do, that is a fair method to prove the innocence of the defendant by showing that he was framed. The opportunity will be patent if it is not already on the record by the time Mr. Furman's cross-examination is complete. The motive, one that would incline a police officer to do something this drastic, even though he had no way of knowing, presumably, whether or not Simpson was in Timbuktu at the time that he was at Rockingham first, is certainly very highly relevant. If it is embarrassing, it is an embarrassment of his own creation. He is the one that created these psychiatric reports and caused them to be filed publicly, hoping to gain as a result. Insofar as the original concern that Your Honor had as to remoteness is concerned, I ask Your Honor to look at the rulings that were made with respect to spousal abuse and the time brackets that the prosecution was permitted to cover. Of special significance is the fact that Detective Furman's own expert opined in the reports that you have reviewed that his anti-racial feelings were incurable and that there was no way that he could continue to be an effective police officer because of that. And if that condition is shown to exist, then it seems to me that the burden of going forward may shift to the witness to show when and if such a cure took place, because we intend to show in incident after incident that Detective Furman was willing to violate the law and the federal civil rights statute to unfairly prosecute black men who he found in the company of white women, and that this pattern was consistent right up until shortly before this incident. Based on all of those facts, the starting point, and we're not seeking at this point to go back to his Marine Corps experiences, which are out there, but the starting point which relate to those, and why he wanted to get out of the Marine Corps, because he could not stand the defiance that minority groups were handing him when he gave them direction, and why he wanted to get out of the police force, because he couldn't take the conduct of the people he had to deal with, is part of a total personality picture that this jury is entitled to evaluate, because ultimately they're going to have to evaluate the question as to whether or not this officer, incensed at being kicked out of the biggest murder case in the history of this state, decided to keep himself in it by becoming an indispensable witness, as he surely has done. That is our presentation, and in that context, I think that we're entitled to have the court reconsider its earlier ruling that these psychiatric reports are verboten. Thank you.
Ms. Clark.
Yes, Your Honor, I don't really think the court needs to hear a lot from the people. The defense has really not offered you any reason to change the earlier ruling that you've issued. What they're basically arguing to the court is that the fact of the court's permission for the defense to use the Kathleen Bell allegations, which we will disprove, nevertheless, the fact that the court issued that ruling is now basically being posited to the court as an excuse to go back into the very items that the court ruled to be too remote and inadmissible. The fact that the people decided to air those incidents that the defense has been threatening to use against Detective Furman by waiving the Newsweek article back in chambers about the mock cross-examination, by the discussions in the nightly press conferences concerning Kathleen Bell and her credibility and what they're going to prove via Kathleen Bell, the people determined as a tactical matter to basically do a preemptive strike and air those matters first on direct examination. But that doesn't open a door any further than it was already opened by the court's ruling. The court ruled that certain things would be admissible, ruled that the Kathleen Bell incident was admissible. If you were inclined to allow the 81 incident, you would have done so. But the mere fact that you've allowed the defense to go into the 85 incident and then the people air it on direct, knowing that the court is going to allow the defense to do so on cross-examination, doesn't open the door any further than it was to begin with. You issued a ruling, you said a certain incident was admissible, and that the defense could go into it on cross-examination. The people were aware of that ruling, but the people were also aware that the court ruled that the 81 information could not be aired. I don't see how there's any different posture now, simply because of the fact that we discussed it on direct examination. And then the court is not given, notably, any relevant case authority to justify this position. It's simply counsel's bald assertion. When you consider the fact that the defense has never and will never be able to demonstrate either the opportunity or give any kind of real offer of proof to this court that Detective Furman planted anything, it's really. And yet they got the 1985 incident as grist for their cross-examination mill. I really think it's already beyond the pale. They will never be able to give this court an offer of proof. They haven't to this date. When the people have requested that they do so, give us an offer of proof. Show us how you're going to prove that this detective planted this evidence. They have not once been able to do so. They have refused to do so. And the reason they've refused to do so is they cannot. There will never be any such evidence because it's an impossibility. And even though There was no opportunity, and it's a virtual impossibility for him to have done what they allege that Detective Furman has done, yet they got the ruling from the court, which was very generous, allowing the 1985 incident for impeachment. To now argue that that very ruling, which the people acted upon, allows them to go further is ludicrous, is without authority and without logic.
Forgive me for interrupting you, Ms. Clark, but don't you think that a prior relationship or a prior meeting between the interested parties, Nicole Brown Simpson, the defendant, and a key prosecution witness, you say that's a generous ruling?
No, I'm not talking about that. I was talking about the Kathleen Bell
Well,
incident.
we're speaking of the 1985 incident.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. The fact that that Detective Furman responded to the 85 incident is not it was not a significant event at the time. In fact, so insignificant that he did not generate a report. He simply responded to the location, was certainly not the only officer to do so. And we will hear from that other officer later on in the case who was also present at the scene. But that in and of itself was obviously not a great event, and it was not something that he even remembered until requested to report on a prior incident back in '89.
No, I was just concerned about your characterization of that as being a generous quote-unquote ruling. I thought I was pretty much compelled to allow the jury to hear that there was some prior contact amongst these parties.
That's true. I'm not arguing that. I was arguing the Kathleen
Okay.
Bell incident, just the Bell incident, Your Honor.
All right.
That was the only one.
Well, no, but Mr. Bailey makes the argument that since we have gone in at some length the 85 incident, then they're allowed to go into they should be allowed to go into the 81 issues.
And I understand,
Okay.
and I think the argument has absolutely no merit. There's no case authority to justify it, and there's no logic to justify it. They are in no different position now than they were when the court ruled earlier. The same information was deemed admissible then, as is now. The court made a ruling saying that the Kathleen Bell incident could come in. The defense was aware that we were going to be proving the 1985 incident, and the defense was very clear in its indication they were going to use the prior contact with Mr. Simpson to try and paint a certain picture of Detective Furman and his activities in this case, which, as I understand it, is part of why, maybe has been part of why the court allowed the Kathleen Bell evidence in. So the court made its ruling based on the fact of the prior contact and then the content of the Kathleen Bell allegations. But the fact that the people elicited this information on direct puts the defense in no different posture. It doesn't make the 81 information any more relevant than the court earlier deemed it. What is the change in circumstance? The court made a ruling on what is admissible. The people acted upon the ruling. And so what is different? Based on their argument, Your Honor, if they brought out the 85 incident and they brought out Kathleen Bell, which obviously they were going to do, they would then be able to stand up and say to the court, well, now that we've brought all this out, we can bring out the 81 incident as well. What's the difference? Same thing. I don't see the change in circumstance. Perhaps if the court does, it could give an indication, but other than their bald assertion that they got this much and so therefore they get this much more, there's no logic and there is no case authority to support the request.
Well, just so we all understand, the basis for the court's ruling on the Kathleen Bell incident is stated in the court's written ruling. However, just so we're all operating from the same sheet of information, it's because of the allegation, one, of racial bias, and two, the willingness to fabricate information regarding interracial couples.
Right.
Which is very specific to the facts and circumstances and similarity to this case. So I felt compelled to allow that for cross-examination.
And the people accept the court's ruling and we
Right.
understand.
Okay.
And all I'm saying is that by virtue of that ruling, the defense does not now get to go and say, well, now the door is open wide. No, the court has already indicated how far the door is open. And it doesn't get opened any further because by virtue of its own ruling, it's kind of a weird, illogical argument. And the people fail to see any merit in it whatsoever, and obviously there's no case authority to support it. people urge the court not to extend the parameters any further.
All right, thank you, Ms. Clark. Mr. Bailey, any response?
Just this response, Your Honor. First, you will recall that Ms. Clark was at great pains to elicit from Detective Furman all of the things he could have done to Mr. Simpson in 1985, as if he had the right to arrest him, pat him down, interrogate him, follow up on the case, to show a lack of animus. Now, that's grabbing the bull by the horns. The word preemptive strike in the trial of cases is spelled W-A-I-V-E-R, and that's true in this case. Furthermore, in the extraordinary set of circumstances where the prosecution felt compelled to acquaint the jury with the fact that this witness required special training so he could control himself on the witness stand, we're entitled to show why that special training was and always will be necessary in his case. And I think they have opened the door wide. You can't just change the rules based on a court's ruling, which reflects other bases, and then say, but we don't want to pay a penalty for that. They took the bit. And I think that the defense is entitled to walk through the cavernous door that they've opened.
All right. Thank you, counsel. Let me just ask Ms. Clark one follow-up question. It's your position that if the court were to grant this wider range of inquiry, you would want to reopen, correct?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Only at the risk of opening the door for Ms. Clark to respond.
I realize that that's a substantial risk, but I left out something that I think is extremely significant, and that is the people displaying to the jury the Bell letter. They chose to do that. They chose to put those words in the jury box, and I think that that ought to be considered, at least by the court, in deciding whether or not there has been a change in circumstances. That's all.
All right. Thank you. Do you want to respond to that last point, Ms. Clark?
I can't see how that makes any difference at all. Unless the court thinks that it does, I will address the issue, but
No, this is just your opportunity to give me the benefit of your enlightenment.
I would be delighted to do so, but only if required to do so. I don't need to burden the court with more statements. I don't see any merit in the additional comments of Mr. Bailey. I think that it makes no difference. And if the court thinks it does, I will address that point. Does the court?
I object to the court previewing its ruling so Ms. Clark can decide whether or not an argument is necessary.
Oh, it's just a very clever way to address these matters. Ms. Clark, actually, the option is yours. If you want to address it, fine. If not, fine.
Other than just to tell the court it makes no difference. Catherine Bell was there in testimony, whether it was with a letter or not.
All right. All right, court's previous ruling will stand. Let's proceed. All right, David McNair, let's have the jurors, please. Let the record reflect we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Detective Mark Furman is reapproaching the witness stand. Good morning again, Detective. You're reminded you were still under oath.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Bailey, you may commence with your cross-examination.
Good morning, Detective Furman.
Good morning, Mr. Bailey.
Could you tell us when it was you were enlightened as to the fact that the plastic you saw in Mr. Simpson's Bronco comes with the car, when you learned that?
Yes, I believe it was Saturday.
Saturday.
Yes.
So that after 9 months of investigation, you discovered on Saturday that this important piece of evidence was perfectly innocuous. Is that right?
Objection, as Ms. Cracknell, evidence.
Sustained. It's argumentative.
Okay. Now, when you first saw the shovel in Mr. Simpson's Bronco, did you think that a significant find?
I don't think significant was the word I would use.
Do you have any experience in digging, Detective Furman?
Yes, sir.
Do you know the difference between the kind of shovel used to dig a hole and the kind of shovel you might use as a scooper, for instance?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And what kind of shovel is this?
Well, that's the type of shovel you use to muck a barn.
Okay. Or scoop up doggy-doo, maybe?
It's a little large for that, but I think I see what you
It
mean.
would
yes.
work, wouldn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, as I understand it, your colleagues, Detectives Van Adder and Lang, on the 13th day of June, 1994, had a total of some 3 hours in the company of Mr. Simpson, correct? Did you learn that?
I had never heard the time, no.
You know they talked to him, don't you?
Yes, I understand that.
You know
yes.
that the part of what they exchanged with Mr. Simpson was taped, don't you?
Objection, relevant beyond the scope. Hearsay.
Overruled. The fact that they had a taped conversation is a fact. It's not the content.
Part was taped, part was not. Was that your understanding?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. That's assuming facts not in evidence.
Okay. Do you know if a formal statement was taken at some point on that day? Just yes or no?
Objection would be speculation on this previous.
Overruled. You can answer the question.
I can only say that through other sources I assumed and I heard, but I had never seen anything or heard anything.
You never talked to Detectives Van Adder and Lang about what the suspect had said during 3 hours of conversation?
No, I didn't.
Never did.
Sustained. Curious to disregard that. Mr.
Do
Bailey.
you know whether or not...
Hold on.
Excuse me.
Be careful, Mr. Bailey. Proceed.
Did you ever learn if Mr. Simpson was ever asked any questions about a shovel?
Sustained. I'm going to sustain the court's own objection. That's hearsay.
All right. Did you ever ask Mr. Simpson any questions about a shovel?
I've never asked.
Overruled.
Did you?
I've never asked Mr. Simpson any questions.
Would you share with us, Detective Furman, some of your educational background, high school, college, that sort of thing?
I went to Peninsula High School. I did not complete. I got a GED. I probably got
A GED is?
general education equivalency diploma.
Mhm.
I attended 1, 2, 3 community colleges. I believe I currently hold approximately 47 units college,
What would that be in years?
close to 2 years.
And what did you study?
History, police science, art.
And have you had any other education beyond these community college experiences?
Are you saying formal education, sir, that I sought
Well,
out?
training courses, anything that would qualify as instruction.
Oh, yes, numerous,
Okay.
numerous courses.
Did you serve for a time in the military?
Yes.
When?
1970 to 72, 73 to 75.
In what branch?
Marine Corps.
Reserve?
No, active duty.
Were you a regular?
Yes.
Or reserve status?
Regular, sir.
Okay. And what rank did you attain?
E5 sergeant.
And what, if any, educational courses did you take in the military?
Except for your basic MOS training, I don't believe I attended any courses.
And MOS means military occupational specialty?
Yes, sir.
What was yours?
Primary machine gunner, secondary military policeman.
Now, in connection with the military police specialty, some training is required before you can have that. Is that not true?
Well, not really. It's more of an on-the-job training type thing. You start out as a gate sentry, and then you work from there. If you have an aptitude, they'll
right.
elevate you.
And what role as a military policeman did you play? Was it tantamount to being a patrolman or a gate sentry, or was it more like a detective?
Well, it started out as a gate sentry, and then I went to patrol. And at some point, I worked with CID on a couple things, but they were not.
CID stands for Criminal Investigation Division, the United States Marine Corps, does it?
Yes.
Okay. And what kinds of cases did you work on with them?
Only one. I posed as a private, excuse me, waiting to get out of the service where they had a narcotics problem. And my role was just to play cards with them and see if I could elicit any information about a hashish connection that they were suspected of being involved in.
You were undercover at the time.
Well, somewhat.
Playing a role.
Yes, I was playing a role.
Okay. And was that your only nexus to any military investigations of suspected crimes while you were in the Marine Corps?
No, I investigated crimes as a patrolman.
Ever investigate any homicide?
No, I
Ever
did
attend any courses on investigation, how it should be accomplished?
not. No, sir.
When you were discharged from the Marine Corps, what did you next do?
I joined the Los Angeles Police Department.
All right, how did that come about? Can you tell us?
I applied for the police department, and I went to Los Angeles, I believe, 3 different occasions. Took the required tests, and I had an academy date approximately 2 weeks, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, to when I exited the Marine Corps.
I take it that you passed the test.
Yes, sir.
And how long after your application were you formally inducted into the police academy?
I don't recall exactly when I applied. I believe it was in 1975. But shortly after my EAS, or my end of my active service.
Now, I don't know that one. You're going to have to explain it.
End of active service.
That's EAS? Is it?
EAS.
Oh, okay.
Then I entered the academy on August 4th, 1975.
Then you had planned to become a police officer before you were actually discharged, is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
How long does this academy last?
I believe it lasted 5 months at that time. I believe I graduated just before Christmas, 1975.
And what kinds of courses did you take there?
It was a long time ago, but your basic split up into 3 areas. You have shooting, physical fitness, and then academics. In academics, it went from everything to traffic citations, to tactical situations, to your investigatory responsibilities on crime scenes, to taking crime reports, English.
Now, you went to the academy with a view toward graduating and becoming a patrolman.
Yes, sir.
Is there a probationary period during which you can be discharged without any cause after you graduate?
Yes.
How long is that?
I believe it was 6 months then.
Tell me a little bit about what you learned on the tactical end of things at the academy.
Well, that was That was a long time ago. Officer safety was stressed quite.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. What are the principles of officer safety that stick in your mind from that experience?
Some latitude here,
I will
Mr.
tell you.
Bailey.
Do you remember any of the
The foremost,
particulars? The foremost.
the hands can kill you, the eyes can't.
Okay. And what about protecting your back?
Oh, absolutely.
When there is danger, normally officers go out in pairs to look after one another, do they not?
That's preferred.
And was that not a principle that you had learned, in fact, in the Marine Corps?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you take any other courses, courtesy the LAPD or at its request, prior to the time that you became a detective?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me just generally what kinds they were?
Yes, detective school, homicide. It was a combined detective and homicide school in that year. I believe it was.
That was for the purpose of the upgrade?
No.
Okay. When did you first go to detective and homicide school? That's what I'm trying to learn.
The first time was 1983.
Okay. And did you complete a course?
Yes.
How long was it?
3 weeks.
And did you learn certain aspects of detection, particularly with reference to homicide cases?
Yes, in a general basis, yes.
All right. Did you have courses in firearms identification?
Are you talking ballistics or the forensics?
No, I'm talking about what most people incorrectly call ballistics, which is a bullet's trajectory. I'm talking about
Yes, sir.
firearms identification, which means matching a weapon to a projectile. Did you have any courses in
No,
that?
excuse me. The class would be what your criminalist could do for you, not your
Okay.
involvement.
Did you learn anything about fingerprints,
Yes.
footprints,
Yes.
blood patterns and spatters,
Yes.
protection of the crime scene,
Yes.
preservation of evidence?
Yes.
And did you also learn that delay after the discovery of a crime is generally the enemy of detection?
I don't recall that, no.
Don't recall that lesson?
No.
Well, did people tell you that, for instance, with respect to homicide victims, that bodies begin to deteriorate after they are dead?
Yes.
Changes take place,
Yes, sir.
all right? That insect and plant life may infect portions of the crime scene. Did you learn that?
Yes.
Okay. As I understood your direct testimony, you estimate that as a patrolman and detective combined, you've been at 150 to 250 homicide scenes, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that as lead detective, once you became a detective, you have had 5 investigations where homicide was the crime,
Yes, sir.
and 10 more where you were with another detective. Is that what you meant to convey?
I think total would be to probably 5 more where I was accompanying as a secondary or,
So this would have been for you and Detective Phillips, had you maintained the lead, or for you at least, the 11th homicide case.
yes, as one of the
As a
detectives.
detective.
Yes, sir.
And was this the first double homicide?
Of this nature, yes.
At what grade did you begin your detective work?
Rank, sir? D1 or Detective 1?
All right. Are there in fact 3 grades of detectives in the Los Angeles Police Department?
Yes, there is.
And you, at the time of this incident, had become a detective of the 2nd rank?
Yes, Detective 2.
And Detectives Phillips, Lang, and Van Adder were all of the 3rd rank at that time, were they not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you became a detective, did you have to take any additional courses in investigation, and particularly homicide investigation?
I did attend detective school once more and homicide school.
What happened in '83? Were there no openings? Or you didn't get promoted to detective at that time?
I hadn't taken the test, sir.
What's that?
I hadn't taken the test.
You took the course in '83 but didn't take the test?
Yes, that's correct.
I see. Why did you not take the test, if you remember?
Oh, well, you can answer the question.
No reason. I had a friend that said, "You want to go to detective school?" And I said, "Sure."
Okay. So you were kind of auditing rather than being enrolled? Is that your posture?
No, I was learning.
Okay. Did you go to precisely the same school or a somewhat different one when you formally took the detective's exam, or prior thereto?
Well, I think the school changed somewhat. They split homicide and detective school.
Mhm.
I first attended to detective school, which was 2 weeks, and then later I attended homicide school, which was 1 week.
All right, and what year was that, Detective Furman?
I believe detective school was could have been 89. I'm thinking more like 1990, and I believe homicide school 1991.
Do you recall now the subjects that were taught to you in the 1991 homicide school?
Well, I don't remember them all now.
All right, well, let's review what we can. Did anyone tell you at this time that you should be concerned about delays in the investigation of homicide cases?
I've never heard anybody phrase anything to do with the bodies at a scene in that way.
All right, well, you've heard it now. Are you saying this is the first time anyone's ever suggested to you that that's a principle?
Well, the way that that's phrased, yes.
You tell us then that in your judgment, the lapse of time is irrelevant to the success of a homicide case?
No, not at all.
Well, did you learn anything about what happens to bodies when you went in 1991?
Yes, sir.
Did you learn about temperature loss,
Yes.
postmortem lividity,
Yes.
rigor mortis,
Yes.
stomach contents and their possible deterioration,
Yes.
contamination by insect and plant material,
Yes, sir.
and the possibility that people at the scene, particularly if it's crowded, may contaminate the area?
Yes, sir.
Those are things that you were instructed to be careful about, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you learn the manner in which time of death can, in some cases, be ascertained in homicide cases?
Yes, sir, several ways.
And what factors did you learn are relevant to establishing the parameters of a time of death?
I don't think I understand that exactly how
Okay.
you asked, sir.
No doctor can ever say this victim died at 32 and a half minutes past the hour. It's not that precise, is it? No coroner can say that, can he?
I would agree with that.
Okay. So normally the time is bracketed by the coroner between 9 and 10, between 9 and 12, whatever, correct?
Yes.
All right. And is it generally true that the longer it takes to get to an autopsy, the broader the range of the coroner's opinion? If he knows.
Or will,
I don't think I have the experience in this field to really answer. I think every scene would be unique to itself, so I don't know if I could answer that.
In how many homicide cases that you have been involved in as a detective, which I take it is now 11, has time of death been an important question?
I couldn't say, but I would say that not all of them.
Not all of them. Half?
I couldn't say, sir. I don't even have the homicides at the forefront of my memory right now.
You don't have any memory of the other 10 cases?
Well, I do, but right now I'm concentrating on this.
All right. Well, would you like a moment to reflect on whether or not you had ever had occasion in the past, prior to this case, to want to ascertain the time of death of the victims?
Yes, I could say yes.
All right. Do you have any recollection at all on how many different occasions that was a necessary part of your investigation?
If I could have a moment to
Sure.
think. I can think of one that was very important.
Okay. It is true, is it not, that the time of death can define the number of people who are potential suspects in a case?
I think it would be useful.
And it can also eliminate persons who might otherwise be suspects in a case, can it not?
I'm sure it could, yes.
Now, in this case, do you regard the time of death of the victims as an important factor?
I don't know enough about the crime scene on this case.
You don't? Okay. When you encountered Mr. Simpson a woman you now know to be Nicole Brown Simpson, in 1985. My understanding is that because you prefer basketball over football, but still like football, you knew who he was as you walked up to him.
As I got close, I saw he was, yes.
Had you ever seen her before?
No.
Did you ever see her again up until the time of her death?
No, sir.
When you were at the scene, did you have any power to pat down anybody there? Would that have been appropriate police conduct?
Which scene is this, sir?
85, the Mercedes.
Oh. I believe I could have, yes.
Well, Mr. Simpson didn't have anything on him or in his hands resembling a weapon, did he?
No.
No. What would be the basis that you'd walk onto a person's land and pat them down? Do you have a legal right to do that?
At some point you do.
And did you have any legal right to arrest him on that day?
Oh, no, I didn't.
So that when Miss Clark asked you on direct examination, could you have arrested him? Your answer was what?
I don't believe it said I could have arrested him, no.
Thank you. In 1989, how did you learn that what you had observed in 1985 might be of interest to the city solicitor or prosecutor? How did you first learn about that?
The one and only time I learned, I was standing in front of the desk of Detective Sergeant Glenn Varner, who I was talking with early in the morning, having a cup of coffee.
Can you tell me about when this happened?
I'm sorry?
Can you relate this to the letter that you wrote to the city solicitor, which we've already seen?
Just prior to writing the letter?
Okay. Detective Varner said something to you?
No. No, he didn't, sir.
What happened?
Detective Mike Farrell came to Detective Sergeant Varner, who was his direct supervisor, and discussed the case, the 89 case involving Mr. and Mrs. Simpson.
Okay. And did you then volunteer the fact that you had encountered them 4 years prior to that?
No, not at that time.
But at some point, were you asked whether or not you could, if requested to do so, give some testimony about the 1985 incident?
No, I overheard Detective Farrell informing Detective Varner that the city attorney would like to have anybody that had been up there that didn't take a report to write a letter to the court.
All right. Now, you did not make a report in that case, and as I understand your direct testimony, that's because you were driving the patrol vehicle and your partner was riding in the passenger seat, and reports were his responsibility. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. You mean to say that if you had been in the passenger seat, you would have reported something to the police department?
No, there was no report to be taken.
There wasn't any reason to make a report, was there, Detective?
No, sir. No, sir.
But in 1989, you found that the city attorney was interested in that incident, or any prior incidents between Mr. Simpson and Nicole, correct?
That's what I heard, yes.
As a result of which, you wrote him a letter saying that because of the celebrity status of Mr. O.J. Simpson, the matter was indelibly pressed into your memory. True?
Yes, sir.
The kind of thing you won't forget for as long as you live. Fair statement?
Seeing Mr. Simpson, yes.
Yeah. Well, and the whole experience of being on his property.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And had the case gone to trial, instead of being resolved as it was, you were prepared to go and testify to essentially what you put in your letter. Is that correct?
I wasn't told that, and I didn't assume that, no.
Were you prepared to if somebody had asked you to?
Oh, I think I would have, obviously I would have responded to a subpoena.
Now, in 1994, at 1:05 a.m., while you were sound asleep, my understanding is you received a phone call from Detective Phillips. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Had you seen Mr. O.J. Simpson personally between 1985 and June of 1994?
No, sir.
Mr. Phillips told you that there was a double homicide in Brentwood and that one of the victims might well be the former wife of Mr. O.J. Simpson, did he not?
Yes, sir.
Did that bring to your mind your prior association with the Simpsons in 1985 as an investigating patrolman and as a potential witness in 1989? Did you remember those things?
I don't believe I even thought of that much at that time.
So I take it that the indelible press that was in your mind in 1989 had faded to a degree.
No, I don't believe that. I was going to a homicide scene, I was mostly thinking about how we were going to handle a double homicide scene and who was getting called in.
Hadn't Phillips explained to you that based on the information he had gotten, this was a special case because of one of the victims?
No, he never verbalized that.
Had you learned from him during that conversation that the commander wished to have Mr. Simpson personally notified as opposed to telephonic notification?
I believe I learned that when we were en route to the Rockingham address.
Okay. Now, following the receipt of this phone call from Detective Phillips, you arose, I take it, showered and cleaned up, et cetera, and drove in your car to the West Los Angeles Police Station. Right?
Yes, sir.
And how long does it take you at that hour of the morning where soon traffic is rather light to drive in from Redondo Beach?
It's fairly quick, probably 20 to 25
Can you see
minutes.
counsel at sidebar without the court reporter, please?
Interested so much in make and model as the specific purpose to which it's allocated.
It's a car that's assigned to a homicide unit. We have a homicide kit in the trunk.
Now, may we learn what a homicide kit consists of? I assume you've been through them more than once.
From the beginning,
Yes.
in the bottom of the homicide kit, you have usually coveralls, pliers, ropes, gloves, sometimes very
kind of
high-powered flashlights.
What kind of gloves, Detective?
Oh, you'd have like work gloves that you would use to maybe climb down a rope. If you're going into a ravine or some inaccessible area, you have to get down to a scene.
You also have rubber gloves?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We saw, well, did you see Detective Lang at any time that day with some rubber gloves on?
I did not know.
All right, continue.
You'd have rulers, tape measures, any necessary reports, plastic bags, envelopes, writing utensils, grease pencils, rulers, compass.
Plastic bags in varying sizes, perhaps?
Yes,
Intended for the collection of evidence, should any be found?
yes.
Okay. Anything else of significance in the standard LAPD homicide kit?
There's quite a few items, but I'm sure I'm leaving out several. But
All right, but these are all tools that might be useful at the scene of a given homicide.
yes,
Did you and Detective Phillips discuss, without going into the conversation, just yes or no, the possible significance of this particular homicide as it might affect the public and the media?
he's talking about the media.
Yeah.
I don't recall discussing that with Detective Phillips.
So no mention of that was made as you were meeting at the West Los Angeles Police Station and while you were getting into the homicide-equipped vehicle.
Not that I recall.
And was he driving?
Yes, he was.
It is a very short distance from there to the intersection of Bundy and Dorothy, is it not?
Yes, sir.
And do you agree that your arrival time, I assume you do because of your own notes, was 2:10 a.m.,
Yes, I do.
and that you and Phillips arrived simultaneously?
Yes.
All right. Now, to your knowledge, you were the first detective on the scene. You too.
Yes, both Detective Phillips and myself.
Did you learn that Sergeant Rossi had been there since early on?
I didn't-
Sometime before you.
Before I arrived, yes.
And did you know him personally prior to this incident?
Just as much as he was the watch commander, nothing personal.
You didn't know anything about his experience in prior homicide cases?
Nothing, sir.
Did you know Officer Risky prior to your introduction to him in connection with this investigation?
Only as much as knowing that his name was Risky and who that name was attached to.
But you hadn't worked with him before?
No, I hadn't.
Okay. Now, I take it that when you arrived at the scene, you had quite a few questions as the initial detectives taking over the case.
Initially, I didn't say hardly anything. Detective Phillips took the lead, talking to Sergeant Rossi.
Okay. Now, Can you give me some idea of the breakout in responsibilities between you and Detective Phillips? Had you worked a prior homicide together?
Yes,
There are certain tasks that have to be looked after immediately after you get on the scene, correct?
yes.
Do you fellows divide up these responsibilities, or does he just take control and direct you to do certain things?
No, there's a way we usually work together.
All right. Now, did you and Detective Phillips have any conversation whereby you allocated the work to be done at this particular scene?
No.
Well, do you know if it was contemplated that you'd work side by side or that you would go off in different directions?
Well, Detective Phillips was a homicide coordinator, so he would not be taking a lead role. It would be one of the other detectives that had been called in that had not yet arrived.
Okay. Now, what other detectives had been called in that you learned about when you got there?
Detective Roberts and Detective Nolan,
And what rank did they hold?
both Detective 1.
So that you, apart from Detective Phillips, would be the senior detective on site?
Yes,
Until
sir.
someone else arrived, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you say that since he's the homicide coordinator, I gather the thrust of that is that you had to do the footwork, so to speak.
Well, working with Detective Phillips, he usually conducts most of your administrative notifications.
Right.
He coordinates and he allows the detectives handling the case to work the case.
Which in this case was you, correct?
Yes, sir.
You were to do the detecting.
Yes.
All right. Now, what did you first address of the many things that you might have looked at when you arrived at the scene?
I'm not sure I understand if you're talking about the
Okay.
crime scene or...
All right. Well, there are certain things that need to be addressed whenever a homicide occurs, correct?
Yes.
And you knew this both by virtue of your training, your experience as a patrolman, and 10 other homicide investigations, right?
Yes.
All right. If the victims aren't quite dead, as sometimes is the case, that's priority number one, treatment and attention to the victims, right?
Yes, sir.
You eliminated that possibility in your own mind rather quickly in this case, did you not?
Officer Risky informed us of the situation.
Okay. The protection of others who may be endangered because of the circumstances evident at the crime scene would be probably the next consideration, would it not?
Yes, sir.
You knew that children had been in the house and had been taken to the safety of the police station.
Yes.
Did you know whether they had been asked as to where other family members might be?
I had no knowledge of any
Did
question.
you make any effort to contact them and inquire?
Not at that time.
Okay. Preserving the integrity of the crime scene, a very, very important task, is it not?
Yes, sir.
You saw that yellow tape had been put up.
Yes.
What else had been done, to your knowledge, to preserve the integrity of the crime scene before you took over?
What I saw was the officers did a very good job in sealing off a very, very large area, considering that their only knowledge was that the crime scene involved one address or one residence. They sealed off a very large area and had uniformed personnel with their vehicles at different locations to keep that area secure and any unauthorized people from entering.
All right. What about the need to notify experts, criminalists, and others to come to the scene while the evidence is still fresh? Did that cross your mind at all that morning?
Yes, sir.
All right. And what, if anything, did you do about that?
I didn't have the case long enough to do anything about it.
Okay. Well, did you develop an interest soon after your arrival as to the time of death of each of the victims?
No.
Did not?
No.
Why was that?
I never got to the point to even give an opinion as a mode of death, and I would leave that to the coroner's investigator.
Okay. Well, you knew that they were dead by a little after midnight, didn't you, based on the information you were given?
I believe Officer Risky gave a general time, yes.
You were well satisfied by what Risky told you and what you saw with your own eyes, that Nicole Brown Simpson was indeed the female victim, weren't you?
I had no idea. I could not see her face. I could not, there was no identification. So at that time, I believe it was assumed, but not known.
There wasn't any question in anybody's mind that 2:10 a.m. that Nicole Brown Simpson was dead, was there?
I don't know that, sir.
Well, was there a question in your mind? Did you really wonder who she was at that point?
I didn't jump to any conclusions about what that scene offered.
My question is, did you know who she was, or were you wondering who she was?
I'd say wondering.
Okay. You couldn't see enough of her to recognize her from your prior encounter?
I wouldn't have recognized her, but identification,
You wouldn't have?
no, sir.
You knew that the pictures of Mr. Simpson were around the house?
I saw one, yes.
And did you see a list of phone numbers on the kitchen wall, which included that of O.J. Simpson?
No, I did not see that.
Did you see a telephone with a speed dial on it?
I believe I saw a telephone next to the kitchen area, but I didn't look at the phone, no.
Didn't examine it at all?
No.
Didn't notice that it had a speed dialer and an entry said Daddy?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Now, had you and Detective Phillips discussed at this point the manner in which Mr. Simpson would be notified?
No, I was not privileged to that.
When did you first learn that special steps would be taken in this case?
I'm sorry, would you repeat
When
that?
did you first learn that special rules had been issued by the brass and the police department as to how Mr. Simpson would be notified?
Never.
You never heard that?
No.
You're learning today that Phillips was told, tell him personally and rather than over the telephone?
No, I thought you meant a special way that we were going to notify. That's desirable in any case. I only learned from Detective Phillips while we were in the vehicle that we were going up to the Rockingham address to make a notification.
But can you tell me when that was?
When we got into the vehicle to leave.
To go to Rockingham?
Yes, sir.
That was 5 o'clock in the morning or thereafter?
Yes, sir.
What's your best estimate?
About 5 o'clock.
Now, I wonder if you could help us, Detective Furman, and just give us your best recollection of your whereabouts at various times that are relevant to your experiences that morning, at least in the view of the defense. You received the call from Phillips at 1:05.
Yes, sir.
Can you estimate at what point you were actually on the road and headed to the station?
Usually takes me maybe 15, 20 minutes to get ready.
Okay, so somewhere between 1:15 and 1:25?
Yes, sir.
And I think you said around 20 minutes to drive in,
Yes.
and you arrived there around 1:50, 1:55?
Shortly before 2, yes.
And having arrived at the crime scene at 2:10, I would assume that you left the station around 2:05?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you can, please try to tell us what you were doing at 2:15, 5 minutes after you arrived at the crime scene.
I believe I was listening to either Sergeant Rossi or Officer Risky explain what they had discovered.
And where were you physically standing as you listened to this information?
Inside the yellow tape behind a police vehicle parked in the roadway.
How long did you spend at that location getting this information before you moved to somewhere else?
A few moments, just long enough to make a few statements about how the bodies were discovered.
Okay, well, a moment doesn't have a very concrete definition. Can you just give us in minutes?
A couple of minutes.
So is it fair to say that by 2:15 you were leaving the immediate crime scene and walking south on Dorothy?
I think that'd be rather quick. We tried to approach to the front of the residence, but then we turned around and then we went down towards Dorothy.
Would it be more fair to say between 2:15 and 2:25 you left the crime scene where you and Phillips and Risky had been looking at the bodies and walked back out to the sidewalk and south on Dorothy?
I think that's too much now.
Too much? Well, understand, I said, you said 2:15 would be too soon, and my question now is, would it be between 2:15 and no later than 2:25?
I would be more comfortable with maybe no later than 20 after.
Okay, so by 2:20, you were on the move. Now, you described how you walked through the shrubbery, I believe you said from off the picture, as you were looking at a photograph of the scene, and could view the body of Nicole Brown Simpson, but did not have a very good view of the body of the other victim from that vantage point. Am I correctly summarizing what happened?
Yes.
All right. In order to attain a better perspective, you questioned Risky, as a result of which you walked down Bundy to Dorothy and around up the alley and into the Simpson home. Correct?
Yes, sir.
And out the front door, which you understood was found open by the officers first on the scene.
Yes.
Can you describe the lighting conditions that existed at the moment that you walked out that front door?
I believe there was light coming from the inside of the residence, cascading down onto the walkway.
Cascading down.
Yes.
Is that suggesting that the naked eye could see most of the detail on the crime scene without the aid of artificial illumination by virtue of that light?
No, there was a lot of shadowing. There was a lot of shrubbery. It wasn't very good light.
Well, did you have your little flashlight with you at that time?
Yes.
That's the little, is it black one?
Yes.
That holds two AA batteries.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and can be adjusted either for a spot or a flood?
Yes.
Then prior to the time that you walked around to the rear of the residence, the only place you had been is with the others in the shrubbery at the gate post, as you put it.
Yes, sir.
True?
Yes.
Okay. At what time would you say you entered the residence, assuming that you left at 2:20 from the immediate crime scene?
Within a minute?
You walked that distance in 1 minute?
Yes, just around the block.
Well, you're a fairly tall fella. Do you know the rate at which you normally walk?
No.
3.5, 4 miles an hour? Like most people?
I would suspect, yes.
Okay. Do you know the distance from the immediate crime scene around the back way into the house?
No.
Okay. 3.5 miles an hour is 309 feet a minute, and 4 is 352. Do you think that the distance was less than that?
That seems pretty accurate, your first number.
Okay. So you think it was about 300 and some odd feet that you traversed to get to the house?
But that would be a great estimation on my part, but I think it's workable.
Okay. And that's about the distance you could walk in a minute. True?
If you say so.
Well, you're the walker. Do you say so?
I walk fairly rapidly, but
All right.
I don't know if it would make a difference.
When you entered the home, did you go directly out through the front door to view the bodies once again, or did you at that time begin to walk around and make observations?
No, I was led by Officer Risky.
The purpose in taking that route was to get back where you had started, but in a different place, right?
Yes, sir.
And to get there without walking through the pooling of blood that was around the area. That was
Yes.
your purpose, right?
Yes, sir.
How long would you say you spent at the crime scene from that vantage point up on the steps, I believe you told us, on that occasion?
Once Officer Risky brought us out into the landing, just long enough to point out a few items of evidence, show us the footprints, and then walk us back along the right side of those shoe prints.
Okay. Well, how long do you think you spent there?
A couple minutes,
Maybe only 2?
2-3 minutes.
Okay. And you made the observations you described for us on direct examination about Mr. Goldman, the other evidence that was lying around?
Officer Risky was pointing them out with his flashlight.
Okay. These are things he had discovered, and he was showing them to you. These were not things that you were discovering as a detective, right?
I was listening and he was pointing them out. Yes, sir.
Right.
That is correct.
But he already knew they were there. You fellows weren't making a discovery at that point, were
No,
you?
we were quiet listening to his lead.
And he told you that he had seen them there when he first came on the scene, a little after midnight.
Yes.
Now, after spending 2-3 minutes there, where did you go?
We walked down along the pathway that's on the north side of the residence, looked at the gate.
This is where you saw the bloody footprints?
The bloody footprints were from the landing westbound.
Right. Now, you've described a path that goes down some steps, levels out, and goes up some steps and out the back gate, correct?
Yes.
Did I understand you to say that the last bloody footprint that you saw that night was on the concrete before you go down the first set of steps?
Or will
Is that correct? Detective Furman?
Would you ask that
Yes.
one more time, please?
Have in mind that steps go up, there's a flat area going by the entrance to the home, steps go down, levels out again, steps go up, and then you go out the back gate. Have that scenario in mind. You remember
Yep.
that now?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Is it correct that the bloody footprints that you saw did not extend beyond the first flat level?
I don't recall they did, no.
You have referred,
I-
you have referred to the depressed area in the past as a trough of some sort, have you not?
Yes.
Okay. Now, my question is, did any footprints go down the steps or into the trough that you saw that night?
I didn't see any.
Okay. Have you had some training in footprints?
Shoe prints? Or footprints?
Footprints? Have you had some classes, some on-the-job training, or anything that would educate you as to the kinds of footprints that can be found at a crime scene and how they can be isolated and preserved?
Yes,
You have.
yes.
Can you tell me when and where you obtained that training?
In detective school, homicide school.
That was a formal class where somebody lectured to you?
I think it was included in a criminalist's ability at conducting some investigations, it
One of the
seems.
things criminalists can do.
Yes.
Now, do you know the difference between a footprint and a foot imprint?
I'd say one would be dimensional, have some character of width or depth and height.
Width or depth?
Width, depth, and height would be something that'd be imprinted in a
You mean
in something.
three-dimensional as against two?
Three-dimensional.
Hold on. Mr. Bailey, would you allow the witness to finish the answer before you start
Yes,
answering? Thank you.
Complete your.
I would say an imprint would be, yes, three-dimensional.
An imprint is the kind of footprint that you might find in soil, sand, or snow, right?
Yes,
A footprint on a hard surface would be two-dimensional, if it existed, would it not?
yes,
It could be outlined in blood or grease or any substance that could be seen, correct?
yes,
Or it could be latent, could it not?
yes.
You know what a latent footprint is?
It would be something that's not visible to the naked eye.
Okay. So that if there were any latent footprints that were on that walkway that night, that's something that only the criminalist could likely pick up, correct?
Yes,
In other words, if there had been two people, one stepped in blood and the other didn't, there might be some latent footprints around to be detected by somebody properly trained. Fair statement?
I'm not sure if it'd be a fair statement.
Don't think so.
I'm a little confused at the question.
Oh, all right. Well, let me see if I can clarify it somewhat for you.
Thank you.
If a latent footprint, shoe print, is one that cannot be seen with the naked eye, but must nonetheless be protected, you can only protect the area where it might be, correct? Not a specific spot in that area.
I understand what you're saying. Yes,
Oh.
sir.
And a criminalist might later come along and either with ultraviolet light or an oblique light find some shoe print in the dust that you hadn't been able to see for lack of training and experience, true?
Yes, sir.
All right. And my question is whether the crime scene that you were walking on as you went back up that walkway with Officer Risky was being protected in that fashion.
I believe the whole scene was being protected, yes.
Okay. But how did you get from the front to the back?
Well, we had to get there some way.
And so you walked,
We walked at the best path that we could determine at that time.
being careful to avoid the bloody footprints and what you thought might be drops of blood nearby,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, after you arrived at the back gate, what time would you say it was then, as you arrived?
I don't know what the timeline would be at that point. It would probably take us a couple more minutes to walk back and make the observations on the gate.
Just give us your best estimate of what time it was when you got to the back gate.
I have no idea.
Would it be before 2:30 or after?
I don't know,
This is
sir.
20 minutes into your investigation.
I don't know.
Okay.
I would probably say a little before,
A little before.
yes.
What did you next do?
Walked out into the driveway.
Mhm.
Officer Risky pointed out blood drops and some change.
Yeah.
Then I re-entered the house.
All right. Now, before you re-entered the house, did you, or had you begun to develop a picture of this crime scene and to have some ideas as to what might be relevant and what might not in the course of the investigation you were about to conduct?
Well,
Did you have an
somewhat,
overview?
a slight overview.
Risky had been doing his best prior to your arrival to do the things he'd been trained to do, correct?
Yes,
And those are the kinds of things that you were trained to do when you were a patrolman at homicide scenes as opposed to a detective,
yes.
all right? Had any canvassing of the neighborhood taken place that you know of?
I believe there had been, yes.
And as I recall from your notes, you said the residents wouldn't open the doors, so nobody learned much.
Well, I think that was an impression of Officer Risky. I don't know if that was accurate.
Somebody told you that.
Yes.
Did you inquire about whether the crime scene had been searched and its surround for any evidence of weapons, clothing, or other implements of crime?
No.
Risky didn't tell you that the area had been looked at, garbage cans, dumpsters, and so forth?
I don't recall him making any comment, no.
Do you recall directing anyone to accomplish that purpose?
No.
All right. Now, would you agree that when there is delay in a homicide investigation, number one, the perpetrators or perpetrator, as the case may be, have a chance to get further and further away from the scene, correct?
Well, I think that would be common sense, yes.
They have the opportunity perhaps to plant evidence to mislead the detectives as time goes by.
I couldn't answer that, sir.
They have time. This is no part of your training, I take it.
Planning evidence? No, it isn't.
And they have time to structure false alibis all during this period that they are not being apprehended.
I would probably agree with that.
And they are free to kill again. True?
If that's the
Well, if
circumstance.
they're not apprehended, presumably they have the same freedom that permitted them to accomplish the grisly scene that you had just viewed. True?
I can't,
Oh, well,
I couldn't speculate on a criminal's intent, whether he killed once or 100.
Well, it seemed to me that a little later that day you were speculating pretty heavily on people's safety and intent, were you not? About
Safety.
5 that morning when you went over the wall, wasn't that because of a concern for safety?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Sorry. All right, sustain. Proceed.
Okay. All right, when did you go into the house, as best you can recall, to make your notes?
Right after Officer Risky led us past the driveway into the alleyway.
Did you give any direction to any of the officers at the scene prior to sitting down to make the notes that we've all viewed as to things they ought to do or ought not to do?
No, I was satisfied with the crime scene, the security of it.
All right. Now, as you understood it, when you and Detective Phillips walked up to that post, what were the rules in force about people going to the crime scene, the area where you were standing?
I'm not sure I understand the rules.
Which people, if any, were allowed to go inside the yellow tape of those who were present when you arrived at 2:10 a.m.?
I would say at that point, concerned detectives, as far as approaching the scene.
Just detectives?
As far as approaching the scene?
Right.
That would be my
All right.
assumption at that point.
Did you issue any orders as to who could and could not cross that tape?
No.
When did you first realize Detective Roberts had arrived?
When he entered the rear of the residence and came into the kitchen area.
And what time was that?
Shortly before this case was relieved from our responsibility.
All right. Now, you have mentioned that event a number of occasions. Can you tell us, according to your best recollection, when it was that Detective Phillips said, robbery homicide is taking over this case?
Within a half hour or 40 minutes of our arrival.
Okay. Well, would the figure 38 minutes after you arrived seem to be about correct?
I've never read that, but I agree with it.
Okay. So that if you got there at 2:10, then about 2:50 or thereabouts, you learned that this case was no longer yours to lead, correct?
Yes.
You were in the process of writing your notes about 10 minutes of 3 when you got this information, as I understand it.
Yes, sir.
And did you cease writing your notes at that point because you had been relieved, or because you learned you'd been relieved?
I completed the notes when Detective Phillips told me that we were relieved of this. I completed the notes that I had started.
How many notes did you write after you got the information?
Oh, there was only 2 or 3 points that I wanted to put on the notes that were of concern.
But you did that subsequently.
I believe when he was standing right there.
Okay. Now, on another subject, just briefly, my understanding is that you were instructed by someone last fall to watch the Larry King show.
No, that was
that
this
on
year.
direct?
That was this year, sir.
Last fall? Oh, no, it was this year.
Yes.
I'm sorry. When was it?
Sometime this year, I think within the last month.
And why were you instructed to watch that show, if you know?
The DA's office wanted me to look at a Miss Kathleen Bell and see if I recognized her.
Okay. Now, had you seen her earlier on any other show?
No.
You had not seen a show called Dateline?
No.
You did not see your lawyer on that show?
No.
Okay. Do you know of a Marine recruiting station down in your neighborhood?
Yes, I do.
Had you been there in 1986?
I believe I was in the recruiting office 2 or 3 times about that time, yes.
Did you in fact make application to re-enter the Marine Corps?
No, I didn't.
Did you fill out any papers at any time during any of your visits down there?
No, I don't believe I did, no.
Did you meet a sergeant named Joe Foss?
Yes, I did.
As a Marine, is that a significant name to you?
Yes, I believe it was I believe it was his grandfather was a famous aviator.
The greatest ace the Marine Corps has ever produced, was he not?
Yes, sir.
Joe Foss of North Dakota?
Yes, sir.
Now, how many times did you make the acquaintance of Mr. Foss in that station? Or in the same general area?
2 or 3.
And did Mr. Foss ever introduce you to a blonde lady?
I don't recall being introduced, no.
Well, when you say you don't recall, does that mean it may have happened, but you can't now dredge up any recollection of the event, or you're pretty certain it never happened? Which do you mean by that?
What I'm certain is that I didn't meet Kathleen Bell at that location.
Okay. Now, in order to determine that, you are relying on her image being shown on a television show while she was being interviewed. Correct?
That and her name.
Well, let's separate this. You say you're sure you never met a woman named Kathleen Bell?
Yes, sir.
You have to answer for the record.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever meet a woman that looks like the lady on the Larry King show by some other name?
No.
In looking at that face, how long did you watch the show that night?
About 5 minutes.
Was that enough to satisfy you that you had never seen this woman before?
I did not recognize her.
No, that wasn't my question. Were you satisfied after 5 minutes, when I take it you discontinued viewing the show, that the woman being interviewed by Larry King and identifying herself as Kathleen Bell was someone you had never met?
That's correct.
Okay. Is it not true that you would have recollected such a person if you had met them under the circumstances she described, without going into what they were?
Yes, I would.
That kind of thing would impress your memory the same way the meeting of O.J. Simpson would it not?
I don't think in the same way, but similar, yes.
Well, what she was discussing was fairly outrageous conduct, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if you had engaged in that conduct with the woman whose image you were looking at, that's not something you would soon forget, is it?
No.
Okay. Chairman, would you take a look at this photograph of a blonde woman and tell me whether or not that is the person that was being interviewed by Larry King when you watched the show at the request of the prosecution?
Yes.
Yes. That is next in order.
1053. Is that a custom in Florida? Never mind. Proceed. Deputy Jester, you're supposed to shoot them when they do that. Proceed.
If I may say so, Your Honor, the configuration is one that I am not familiar with, so if I have stepped in the wrong area, I am well advised.
Thank you. Proceed.
All right. May I exhibit the photo, put it up to you? All right, Detective Furman, for the record, is this the same photograph that I showed you a moment ago at the witness stand?
Yes, it is.
And do you have no recollection of Joe Foss being in your company and hers in the recruiting station in 1986 or thereabouts?
I do not.
Or at any time in your life?
I do not.
So that if he were to say that he did in fact introduce the two of you, you say that can't be true. True?
If he said that, I do not recall ever meeting this woman in the recruiting station or anywhere else.
All right. Well, I'm trying to get the distinction between a lack of recollection, a faded memory, and an absolute certainty that you have never seen this woman before until you saw her on television. Which is it?
I do not recognize this woman as anybody I have ever met.
All right. You testified on direct examination that not only did you not know this woman and had never met her, but you had never said the things that were displayed on the Elmo in her letter. True?
Yes, sir.
All right. And is it fair to say there can be no mistake in your mind about your testimony in this part?
That's correct.
All right. Now, do you know a woman named Andrea Terry?
No, I do not.
Did you ever meet a woman standing 6 feet 1 inch named Andrea Terry in a bar down near where you live?
No, sir.
Is there a bar down in that area that you frequent?
No longer, but yes, there is.
Back in 85?
Yes, sir.
What was the name of it?
Hennessy's Tavern?
Hennessy's Tavern. Now, I ask you whether or not, on an occasion in the middle 80s, related in time to your going to the Marine recruiting station for whatever purpose, you met with a woman named Andrea Terry and Kathleen Bell, an independent and second occasion.
No.
Have you been shown any photographs of Andrea Terry by anyone?
No, I have not.
Did you spend a little time discussing her with the prosecution this weekend?
It was mentioned, but I said I don't know this woman.
Tell me about the mention. Where were you and who you talking?
It was just asked, excuse me, on the
Where
first
were
part-
you and who were you talking with and the subject came up?
in this building.
Talking to Ms. Clark or one of her associates? Is this before or after you went and found out about the standard equipment for the Bronco?
No, that was at my residence.
Okay. Did you do that on your own or did someone ask you to do it?
No, someone that knew somebody called and said, that's what that bag is.
But a lot of phone calls came in about that, didn't they?
Not to my knowledge, one.
Oh, okay. In any event, were you asked whether or not a woman named Andrea Terry had ever met you in Hennessy's Tavern, with or without Kathleen Bell?
I've never heard the last name, but the first name I did hear.
Okay. Does the first name mean anything to you?
No.
Are you as satisfied that you did not meet Kathleen Bell with another woman in Hennessy's as you are that you did not meet Kathleen Bell in the recruiting station?
Yes.
So that if an Andrea Terry were to testify that she was with you in Hennessy's Tavern in 1986 with Kathleen Bell and heard remarks such as the one we've seen, you would say that is a fabrication, Detective Furman?
I don't know why she'd do it, but yes, I would.
No question about it.
No question
Now,
about
have
it.
you ever done anything, to your knowledge, to hurt or otherwise offend anyone in the Bell family, assuming that there is one?
I have no idea, sir.
Ever had any contact with any relative or possible relative of Kathleen Bell in your capacity as a policeman?
I would have no way of knowing that. The name is Bell does not ring a...
The name Bell doesn't ring a bell. Is that
Yes,
what
sir.
you were trying to say?
Yes,
Okay. And what does the name Terry ring, or Andrea?
nothing.
Okay. So, under these circumstances, the statement of Mr. Foss that he made one introduction and the statement of Ms. Terry that she was in a meeting with the two of you, or an encounter, would both be incorrect. All right?
What was the last of that question, sir?
Let me break them up. We've already heard from you that Mr. Foss would be seriously in error if he said he introduced you to the woman whose picture is on the album.
Yes.
It never happened. True.
Kathleen Bell? No.
Okay. And you never met her in Hennessy's Tavern?
No.
On any occasion or under any circumstances or with any other person?
No.
And you have no image in mind of a tall, attractive woman named Andrea with whom you talked in Hennessy's Tavern in 1986?
None at all.
None whatsoever.
No.
Now, Detective Furman, are you as satisfied with the quality of the truth of your denial of knowing Kathleen Bell as you are of your claim that you found the right-handed glove on Mr. Simpson's property? Is the quality of the truth of those two statements the same, or is one stronger than the other, if you know?
I don't understand any of that.
You don't understand that question.
No.
Are you as certain that you have never met Kathleen Bell on any occasion as you are that you in fact found the right-hand leather glove we've been discussing on Mr. Simpson's property?
Mr. Clark, I can barely hear you. Is that
I go on
objection what?
objection that states the testimony.
All right. Overruled on that ground. Proceed.
Objection made.
Sustained.
Can you tell us why you were at the recruiting station and on what days?
On what day? I cannot.
How many occasions?
2 or 3.
And what was your purpose in going there?
I asked Sergeant Foss if there was any good reserve units that were, they had any openings.
And how many times did you do that?
Well, I found that there wasn't really any movement in the reserve units at that time, but I enjoyed talking to Sergeant Foss, so I returned for a few other times.
Did you meet anyone else while you were there?
A Mr. Rohr or Sergeant Rohr,
Sergeant Rohr. Ron Rohr?
I believe. I don't remember his first name.
And how many times did you meet him?
I think he was there every time.
And did you talk with him about possibly enrolling in a reserve unit?
No. I think he might have overheard my purpose, but that was dropped fairly quickly.
Foss was the main source of information.
Yes.
And how many times did you see Sergeant Rohr?
A couple of times.
Did you see a Marine while you were there on any of these occasions named Max Cordova?
I believe I saw a Marine that I later found out was him. I didn't remember his name.
Did you speak to him at all?
I remember him kind of in the background of the recruiting office doing some tasks.
You remember an occasion when he pointed out to you Sergeant Rohr, who was then coming across the street?
I don't remember that now.
Have no recollection of such an event?
No.
How long were you in the company of Max Cordova? Do you know his rank, by the way?
No, I don't.
PFC, Corporal, Sergeant?
I don't know, sir.
Was he in uniform?
I believe so, yes.
Were all of these people in uniform whenever you saw them on the 3 occasions that you went to the station?
Yes.
And how long would you stay on the first, second, and third occasions, if you can tell us individually?
Long enough to have a cup of coffee. 15, 20 minutes.
Did you ever have any conversation with any of these three men outside the station?
I think one time Joe Foss wanted to look at my car, my truck, and we walked out.
Okay, and did you take him out to look at it?
I think I was leaving at that time when we went out.
Then did you meet any other people out in the parking lot that you can remember?
No.
Did you know when you were there in 1986 that Kathleen Bell worked upstairs, directly over the recruiting station in a real estate office?
I was told that a female that came in there at one time worked in the Century 21.
Mm-hmm. But that female you saw, did you see a female?
Yes, I saw a female come in there at one time.
All right, and that was someone other than Ms. Bell?
I don't know. I didn't pay much attention to whoever came in there.
Are you now saying, sir, that if you've ever seen Kathleen Bell, you didn't recognize her, but she may have walked through that place without your knowledge? Is that your present posture?
Well, she could have.
She could have.
She could have walked through
Describe the woman you did see.
that. I couldn't.
Blonde, brunette, redhead,
I couldn't, sir.
tall, short, stout, slim?
I paid almost no attention. I saw a female walk in like she knew people in the office, and I continued my conversation with Mr. Foss.
Well, without that information, how did you know it was a female?
Well, I could tell it was a female, sir.
You
But I
looked
didn't pay
at
any-
least that closely.
Well, I could tell she was a female.
Okay. And you
Excuse
can
me?
tell that Miss Bell was a female, can't you?
Yes.
From seeing her on Larry King. Are you quite sure that they are not one and the same, the female you saw and the woman on the Elmo?
Am I sure?
Are you sure?
I'm not
Detective
sure.
Furman? You're not.
I just do not know Miss Bell.
So you may have seen Miss Bell, and you're now unable to recollect that. Is that so?
No, I didn't pay any attention to the female that came into the recruiting office.
Please listen to the question. You may have been in the same room with Miss Bell, but you don't now recognize her. Is that the way you want to leave it?
Sustained.
It's good break time, huh?
It is.
Ruling?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the morning session. Please remember my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't conduct any deliberations till the matter has been submitted to you. Do not allow anybody to approach you or communicate with you with regard to the case. Detective Furman, you're excused until 1:30.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, we'll stand in recess 1:30. The witness stand, please. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let the record reflect that we've now been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel, that Detective Mark Furman is on the witness stand on cross-examination by Mr. Bailey. Good afternoon, Detective.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
You're reminded that you are still under oath. Mr. Bailey, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Furman, when we adjourned, you were pondering the possibility that you might have unknowingly bumped into Kathleen Bell in the recruiting station, that you had seen some female about whom you had no recollection whatsoever. Is that a fair summary of where we were?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, over the lunch hour, have you had an opportunity to ruminate upon this matter?
No, I'd say it's the same.
Your state of mind still is that if you saw Kathleen Bell at all, it was in some instant where you took no account whatsoever of her appearance and don't even know that you met her.
That'd
that
be
it?
correct, sir, yes.
Okay. And the one thing of which you are certainly sure is that you never had a conversation with her which would have been offensive to anyone with racial feelings.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, as to the Hennessy's Tavern incident with Kathleen Bell and Andrea Terry that we talked about, you still say you have no recollection whatsoever of that.
That's correct.
But you have seen many females in Hennessy's Tavern, have you not?
Well, of course, I'd say half the people in there would be females.
Half of the people there, yes. Is that what is it known as, a singles bar?
No, it's a neighborhood bar.
A what?
It's a neighborhood bar.
Neighborhood bar, okay. And having viewed this morning the photograph of Kathleen Bell, you are quite certain that she was never in there, or that if she was, you didn't see her, correct?
That would be correct.
All right. And one thing of which you are very certain is that you had no conversation with Kathleen Bell with or without another woman about matters offensive to people who are racially sensitive. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Now, if we may, let's return to the crime scene. You are making notes when, at around 2:50 a.m., Detective Phillips tells you you're out of the case. True?
Yes, I don't know the exact time, but yes.
Had it dawned on you by 2:50 a.m., Detective Furman, that this was a case of some magnitude, this homicide?
I don't think I understood exactly what would transpire with this case, no.
No. I'm going to ask you again. Had it dawned on you that this was a homicide of some magnitude?
Any double homicide, yes.
Far and away the most important in which you'd ever been involved from the perspective of the news media. True?
I didn't know that at that time.
Did you have some other case in your mind that was as important as the murder of the ex-wife of O.J. Simpson that you had been involved in?
I didn't know how important the media would play that case up.
Have you ever been involved in a murder case that attracted the national media in your career prior
No.
to this one?
No.
And are you saying you gave this matter and its dimension no thought as you drove in that morning?
No, I was worried about how I was going to approach a double homicide.
Well, did you think that you were a qualified person to investigate a double homicide of this nature?
Yes.
You didn't ask for any help, did you?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Other detectives to assist you who were more experienced?
Well, Detective Phillips was there.
But
I have-
Detective Phillips was assigned. He's the one that called you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you meant.
You didn't ask Phillips into this case, did you?
No, it was the other way around.
That's right. And had it not been from an order from on high, you would have been perfectly content to go forward and take charge of this investigation as the field man, correct?
Yes.
With Phillips as the homicide supervisor and coordinator. True?
Yes.
All right. In other words, you felt that your experience was up to the job that confronted you. True?
Yes.
And it was never your intent to ask the big boys from robbery homicide to come help you. Was it?
At that time, no.
At any time, did you suggest we better get Lang and Van Adder in here?
Well, I didn't know Lang and Van Adder.
Did you ever suggest to anyone we better get some of the more experienced guys from downtown who handle lots of homicides?
I probably would have later in the day, yes.
Did you ever suggest that to anyone before you were told you're off the case?
No.
Did not. Now, did you experience any disappointment whatsoever when Phillips told you you were being removed from this murder case?
Did I show any disappointment?
Any disappointment whatsoever? Did you experience any?
Well, I was disappointed we lost the case.
Sure. Did it go a little further than that, Detective Furman?
No, not at all.
Weren't you a little bit angry that you were being shoved out of
No.
a murder in your own territory?
No.
Didn't bother you a bit?
None.
Weren't you a fellow that had spent a good part of his career waiting for an opportunity to make, quote, the big arrest?
No.
You recall those words cropping up in your evaluations, that you wanted to make the big arrest?
I don't think it...
What's the objection?
Can we approach
What's the objection? What's the legal grounds?
beyond the scope? It's also,
I'm sorry, what's the ground? Beyond the scope, is that it? Overruled.
Do you recall that?
Would you repeat what you asked me,
Yes. Do
please?
you recall in your evaluations as an officer the criticism that you were too much interested in making the big arrest?
Sustained. Hearsay.
Okay. In any event, can you explain to us what you were in fact feeling when you told that you were out of the case and others would take over?
I was disappointed in losing a case that looked very interesting and very complex.
Okay. Now, did you decide to do something as a result of this displacement?
No.
Well, the people of the state of California were protected to a degree, starting at 210, by the expertise of you and Detective Phillips on the crime scene, attempting to solve the homicide if at all possible, I take it. Is that so?
I'm not sure what you're asking, sir.
Were you entrusted with the supervision, you and Phillips, of this homicide and its solution and its care?
Yes.
Oh. And is it not routine that somebody be in charge of a homicide after it's discovered?
Yes.
Okay. There was no one else to take over that responsibility until after 4 o'clock, was there?
No, there wasn't, sir.
What did you do between 2:50 a.m. and 4:05 when Philip Van Adder showed up on the scene? What did you do?
Waited for their arrival on the street in front of the residence.
In other words, the whole homicide solution process ground to a halt. Is that right?
At that moment, waiting for them, yes.
In other words, you were disabled to take any steps whatsoever that you would otherwise have taken if you were left in charge for that hour and 10-minute period. Is that the rule in your department?
Yes, I was relieved of the case.
Okay. And were you prohibited from giving any directions or taking any of the routine steps a homicide detective might take?
Yes.
Okay. And who told you that?
Detective Phillips.
Detective Phillips, give us his exact order to you that accompanied the notice that you were out. What was the order?
Robbery homicide's taken the case.
Yeah. Did he say, Mark, don't do any more work on this case?
No, I understood that.
Well, you understood it how?
I've been on the department long enough to understand what that means.
How many times in the past had you been pushed aside in favor of other more senior detectives, detective firm?
Oh, that happens quite frequently in the city.
Of the 10 prior homicides in which you participated as a detective, in how many of those did you get pushed out so others could take over? Do you remember?
Yes,
How many?
probably 3 or 4.
All right. And who took over in those cases?
Robbery homicide?
From downtown?
Yes.
And under similar circumstances, big case, that sort of thing?
Out of the scope of our abilities or logistics, yes.
Okay. Now, my understanding was, in your view, this case was not beyond the scope of your abilities, and you were willing to continue as
At what-
detective
Sir, at what time are you asking me to make that determination?
prior to 2:50 a.m. when you got the notice.
At that time, I felt we could probably handle it, yes.
Was there anything unusual or bizarre about these murders other than the fact that one of the victims was formerly married to a well-known American icon?
I didn't know much about the scene at that point, so that'd be hard to say.
Well, let's talk about the observations you had made. Were you somewhere trained in any of the courses you took or any of the on-the-job training to recognize the difference between a wound of incision and a gunshot wound?
Well, they'll look somewhat different.
Were you taught anything at all about how knifings are accomplished and what they do to the body depending on where they're accomplished?
I don't specifically remember that, no.
When did you first learn that the female's victim's throat had been cut completely?
It would have to have been sometime in the afternoon of the 13th.
After the coroner got there?
Yes.
All right. Did anything that you saw as you stood looking at the scene that we have viewed now too many times of the body of Nicole Brown Simpson suggest the use of firearms?
No, there wasn't.
Have you ever heard of a Columbia necklace?
No.
You're hearing that word for the first time today?
No, I know what a Columbia necktie is.
No. Columbia necktie. What's a Columbia necktie, detective firm?
Cutting somebody's throat.
Okay. You ever hear it called as a necklace?
No.
And that includes cutting the throat so severely that both the carotid arteries are severed, correct?
I don't know about that, but I just heard the term.
What happens when they are severed? Do you know from your training?
Well, the person will bleed profusely and die.
The blood pressure drops to zero and death occurs almost immediately, isn't that so?
I would assume so.
If your throat is cut that severely while you are standing and somebody's holding your head, you'd be dead before you hit the ground, wouldn't you? If you know.
I'd have to speculate. I couldn't tell you that, sir.
You never had that training?
It would be quickly.
Okay. Did you concern yourself before you were off the case as to, from the evidence that you could see, which victim died first?
I couldn't tell any of that from the scene.
Did you make any observations?
I made no detailed observations that would give that information.
Did you deduce, Detective Furman, from the quantity of the blood surrounding the body of the female victim, that she had bled very profusely
Yes, I would conclude that.
and could well have suffered a massive injury to the carotid arteries in the neck?
I couldn't assume that.
You couldn't?
No.
Did you have any idea where all that blood came from?
Somewhere in the head area, but I couldn't see her face.
But a massive injury of some sort.
Yes, sir.
One that probably produced death very quickly, correct?
Yes.
And probably she had never moved from the point at which she fell, from the evidence that you saw. A fair deduction?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you notice the blood on her back in droplets?
No, I didn't.
You never saw that?
No.
Either when you walked up to the gate post with Phillips, or when you came back around the walkway and out the front door and looked down from the steps, you never noticed the blood specks on the back of the female victim?
No, sir, I didn't.
Have you to this day seen them in any of the photographs you reviewed, including the ones we looked at in court?
No.
Well, is it part of your training that you observe details of that sort when you go to a homicide scene?
Yes.
And you made no such observation?
Not on the first walkthrough, no.
No. As you sit there today, what can you tell us about the existence or non-existence of blood drops on the back of Nicole Brown Simpson?
I've never been shown any photos of those blood drops.
Can you say whether or not they ever existed, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, I cannot.
Okay. And you were at one time the lead field detective on the scene. Is that what we're to understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you had two opportunities to view that body close up with the back pointed up toward the sky, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you do not know whether the back was clean or had some substance on it.
You're talking about blood drops.
Any substance.
You didn't ask that, sir. Blood drops, no.
Okay.
I didn't see anything.
Did you see any specks on there?
I did not take a close look at the back, no.
On either occasion, the view from above or the view obliquely?
No.
Okay. Now, you have told us all of the places that you went from the time that you arrived on the scene of Detective Phillips and marched up to the crime scene and found that you couldn't really get at it that way, to going back and walking through and out the walkway and in through the garage and up into the house. And it is in the house while you're writing notes that you get this notice. True?
Yes.
Now, up to this point, and apart from what Officer Risky told you that he had discovered before you arrived, had you detected anything?
No.
No. All you had done was to observe things that had already been discovered by others and were pointed out to you, correct?
Excuse me, I'd like to correct that.
Okay.
I saw a partial fingerprint on the back gate, and I saw 2 additional blood drops on the gate.
Okay. So those are things that you saw presumably for the first time among yourself and your colleagues.
Yes, sir.
All right. And you made due note of those, did you not?
Yes, I did.
How long would you say you spent writing these notes in total?
I started writing the notes as we were talking to Officer Risky. I made notations during pauses. Maybe 10 minutes,
Okay.
maybe a little longer.
Did you walk around the apartment and make your observations there before, I should say the condominium, before or after you made your notes?
I made a few notations, but I think pretty much before.
Well, I'm not sure I understand your answer.
Well,
Did you do some before and some after, all before or all after?
yes, I remember writing the beginning of the notes when talking to Sergeant Rossi and Officer Risky. And then as we started walking, I wasn't writing notes as we were walking. If we paused, I'd make a notation. And then I caught up on the notes inside.
Okay, so you're making little rough notes and then sat down and wrote the 3 pages we've been shown?
No, I was writing the 3 pages. I just wasn't able to stop and write them.
Had you noticed a telephone in the kitchen?
Yes.
Were you interested in who it was who had last spoken with the victim, the female victim, who lived on the premises?
At that early in the investigation, it hadn't occurred to me, no.
It hadn't occurred to you to try to get in touch with whoever had last talked to her before her death?
No.
You knew, of course, that if you were able to do that, that would establish the last moment at which she was alive. True? Or could establish?
I think that would be a possibility.
Well, if somebody was talking to her on the phone, that would lead to a fair inference that she was a living person, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it?
If I could identify her voice on the phone.
Now, just assume that somebody who knew her was talking to her on the phone, like her mother, for instance, at 9:44 p.m. If you could have learned that, Officer Furman, that would have helped you insofar as time of death, would it not?
Yes, sir.
Between 9:44 and when the bodies were discovered at midnight.
Yes.
True?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you think to pick up the phone and punch the redial button?
I wouldn't have picked up the phone, sir.
Did you think to do that?
No, I didn't.
Was there any rule of your department that says you couldn't do that, to find out who she had last dialed?
Well, I wouldn't have wanted to pick up the phone before it had been printed.
Well, weren't you aware that Risky had already been using it to call the station?
No, sir.
He didn't tell you that?
No.
Okay. And you had no interest in the fact that a speed dial mechanism might have directly called the parents of the two children or the father of the two children been taken away?
At that time, no.
Did not? Okay. Were you engaged to any degree in an effort to try to figure out who might have committed these homicides?
No, sir.
Well, were you trained to look initially when a homicide occurs? Statistically, who might the perpetrators likely be?
I don't know, sir.
Relatives, friends, people close in, as opposed to total strangers? Isn't that an area where you always look, Detective Furman?
When you have someone that doesn't appear to be a resident, no. That's also one of the victims.
Didn't you know that Nicole Brown Simpson lived in that home?
I didn't know that was Nicole Brown Simpson at that point.
You knew it was Nicole Brown Simpson at 1:05 a.m. when Detective Phillips told you that, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
Did he tell you this is Nicole Brown Simpson, a victim?
No. He said it might be. We believe it is.
Did you ever testify on a prior occasion that he told you it was, without equivocation?
Could have been.
You might have testified to that, and if you
Yes,
did,
sir.
you now say that was wrong.
No, I'm saying that nobody knew it was Nicole Brown Simpson. They assumed it was.
Was there ever a point prior to your being relieved when you took it to be the fact that this was Nicole Brown Simpson, the victim who lived in the house upon whose premises the bodies were found?
I personally could not conclude that, no.
Did not conclude that. You still thought it might be a passerby?
No, we did not know the whereabouts of Nicole Brown Simpson, and nobody had verified that.
Did you know who lived in the house?
Nicole Brown Simpson.
Did you know that there were children in the house with no mother when the police got there?
Yes, sir.
And that didn't lead you to conclude that Nicole was out on the walk.
I had no knowledge of what the children were asked.
Did you have any interest at all in the identity of the male victim?
Yes, sir.
And what did you do about trying to learn that identity?
I could do nothing.
You could do nothing. Now, are you talking before 2:50 a.m. when you'd been on the job for 40 minutes, or after?
Either.
Either. Why could you do nothing prior to the time you were relieved?
Prior to, I couldn't approach the bodies and look for identification. And afterwards, it was no longer my case.
All right. You couldn't approach the bodies, you mean you couldn't disturb them to go for a walk?
That's correct.
All right. Could you have asked neighbors to view the bodies and see if anyone recognized the victim?
If we had a Polaroid,
No. Could you have asked neighbors to come and look?
I would not have asked neighbors to enter a crime scene.
You wouldn't do that?
No, sir.
Okay. Could you have checked cars in the neighborhood on the off chance that this male victim had driven to the scene as opposed to walking?
Had I kept the case, I'm sure that would have been done.
But as of 2:50, you hadn't done that either, had you?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, from 2:50 until 4:05, as I understand your direct testimony, you went to the intersection of Dorothy and Bundy and stood there.
That's correct.
For 65, 75 minutes, you stood at the intersection waiting for your replacement. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And what did Detective Phillips do during that 75-minute period?
Stand there and wait with me.
The two of you, for 75 minutes, stood stock still, or did you wander around a bit?
Oh, we could have wandered around a little bit on the street, but predominantly stayed in that general area.
Did you go back to the crime scene?
No.
Did you do any more observations?
At one time, I did make an observation from the north residence.
Oh. I don't recall you mentioning that in your direct examination, did you?
I believe it did, yes, sir.
You did?
Yes.
Well, tell us about it. What did you do from the north residence?
Lieutenant Spangler had walked to the north residence of 875 South Bundy and looked between the iron fence that was about 3 or 4 feet from the feet or buttocks area of the male victim, and he noticed a portion of bare skin, and he said, "You can see some type of a wound there." And he directed me to go over there, and I did. And I looked at it, and it appeared to be a laceration of some sort.
Where?
I believe it was on his side or his back.
And where were you standing when you observed that?
There's a walkway that goes on the north side of the white wrought iron fence that separates those two residences, between 875 and the one to the north.
Whose property were you standing on, as you understand it, when you made the observation with Lieutenant Spangler?
I don't know.
You know what time it was when you made that observation?
Probably somewhere right after 3:30.
Long after you were off the case, then?
Yes.
All right. Well, then you did not spend the entire time down at the intersection waiting for Messrs. Van Adder and Lang.
Except for that, no.
All right. Well, tell me how it occurred that Lieutenant Spangler took you up there as a detective no longer on the case to make this observation. Did he come to you at the intersection?
Yes.
All right. And what did he say?
Well, he just went up to view the scene from the north residence, so he didn't disturb it.
How long had he been there, if you know?
I don't know, sir.
You didn't see him arrive?
I don't know when he arrived, no.
Did he arrive after you or before you?
After.
Okay. But as to the time, you don't know?
I do not.
Okay. All right, so he said something to you about a view. Did he invite you or direct you? He was your boss, wasn't he?
He directed me. He said that there was some sort of a wound on the male victim. It's visible.
Okay. So you walked back up Bundy, where the bloody paw prints were?
No.
Where did you walk?
I just walked up the street and then entered the north residence.
You stayed off the sidewalk,
Yes, sir.
walked up the street,
Yes.
and walked around what we call the fence, against which the male victim's body was kind of crumpled,
Yes, sir.
okay? And how far into the property did you go? How many rungs of the fence would you estimate, vertical rung?
Where the male victim was.
Okay. Can you place yourself with respect to the fence?
Directly to the north of the fence where the victim was.
How long did you spend there?
5 seconds.
How long was Lieutenant Spangler there with you, if he was?
He wasn't, but when he walked over there, I think he was just there for a few moments.
When you walked up the street, was he walking beside you?
I don't recall if he did or he didn't.
Did he come with you to the location to whose view he had commended you?
I don't believe so, no.
All right, you believe you were alone at that point.
Yes.
You walked in, did you have your little flashlight?
Yes.
Did you use it?
Yes.
Were there any other lights being shown on the area at that time?
No.
Was anybody else on the crime scene near the body inside the fence?
No.
Was anybody next to the fence on either side?
No.
Was anybody accompanying you in any way for
No.
that visit?
No, sir.
And how close to you was the nearest detective or officer, as you remember?
On the street.
On the street.
Yes.
So that would be what, 20 feet? At
Prob-
least?
Probably longer than that.
More than that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And you think that you were there for about 5 seconds?
Just long enough to look at the wound.
And then where did you go?
Just went back to the street.
And?
I made a comment to Lieutenant Spangler, it looks like a laceration.
Okay. Is that all that you said?
That's all I said.
You say anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you then go back to the intersection?
Yes.
Now, you had been gone from the intersection less than what, 3 or 4 minutes?
I don't even think that long, sir.
And did you stay there with Detective Phillips until Detective Van Adder arrived at about 4:05?
Yes.
Did you talk to Detective Phillips about the case?
I don't recall talking about the case, no.
Did you talk to him about the fact that you fellas were no longer on the case?
No.
Did you talk at all, or did you just stand there for an hour?
Well, I talked, but I don't recall talking about this case.
Is it fair to say that absolutely no detecting went on from 2:50 until 4:05 except for your little visit to the fence?
I'd say that's accurate.
Now, did you tell Phillips that this looked like a knife wound, this wound, or a sharp instrument?
I think the term I used was a laceration.
How are lacerations inflicted in your vocabulary, Detective Front?
Well, laceration would be somewhat of a tear, where a stab wound would be an incision.
A tear inflicted by what instrument? Bare hand?
I don't know, sir.
Don't know. When you looked at the laceration, do you have any training in examining wounds with a view toward determining how they were inflicted?
No, sir.
You never covered that in any of your courses?
Well, I surely couldn't from where I was standing looking at a small laceration in the dark.
All right. Now, you say a small laceration. How big?
It appeared to be about an inch, 3/4 to an inch long.
An inch. And you say a tear rather than a slice or incision?
That was just my impression, sir.
Did you see a jagged edge with your little flashlight?
It just appeared more to be a laceration than it did an incision.
And the distinction you draw in using those two words, laceration and incision, is one is a tear and the other is a cut. Is that right?
One has clear edges and one does not.
And which kind was this?
It just appeared that the ends of it looked somewhat torn.
You mean the wound was turned in upon itself?
No, I think it was a little puffy, if I remember right.
Okay. It didn't look like a gunshot wound by a long shot, did it?
Not to me, no.
And it didn't look like he'd been bludgeoned, did it?
I couldn't make that determination, but I would have to say no.
That particular wound.
That's true.
It was not the work of a bludgeon, was it?
Didn't appear to be, no.
No. And you mentioned all this to Phillips.
I think I mentioned to Lieutenant Spangler. Phillips might have overheard it, but we were all standing pretty much in the same general area.
Now, is that the sum total of the observations you made on that little excursion? You saw a knife wound and that's it?
Yes, sir.
Nothing else?
I don't believe so, no.
How about a couple of gloves, Detective?
Excuse
Did you
me?
see a couple of gloves up there?
No, I saw one glove.
Well, you didn't mention that a minute ago, and I asked you if you'd seen anything else. You now say you saw one glove.
Well, I already talked about the one glove and the hat.
You hadn't talked about this excursion before, I don't believe. But I asked you if you saw anything other than a laceration. You said no. You want to correct that?
Objection. At what time?
The only visit he made to the fence, as I understand it. Did you make more than one detective from it?
More than one what?
To that vantage point to view Goldman's body, did you make more than the one that you made at the behest of Detective Spangler?
No.
All right. That's the sole opportunity you had to observe from that point on the north property. True?
Yes, sir.
I asked you if you saw anything other than laceration. I believe you said no. Did you?
I thought you were speaking about the body.
You did?
Yes.
You thought my question restricted you from mentioning anything not connected with the victim's body. Is that right?
Well, I had already testified to the other evidence I observed, and I thought you were talking about new items that I had seen.
When did you testify to that?
This morning?
Okay. This morning?
Well, excuse me,
You don't mean that, do
the
you?
last direct.
Last week?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember when?
Thursday or Friday, sir.
But you're satisfied that in the transcript of your direct testimony, there is mention of this view, the laceration, and the glove, and the fence on the north property. You're satisfied of that?
Oh, I'm not sure if I testified to that or not. I think we were working up to that. We might have. I might be incorrect.
We worked up to it.
In other words, we were chronologically going through the crime
Now,
scene.
look, Detective Furman, there is a problem with that testimony, isn't there? The testimony about the view through the fence.
No, there isn't.
There's a problem that's been brought to your attention, isn't there, Detective Furman?
No.
When discussing this event in the preliminary hearing and talking about the glove, his tongue slipped and you said them, didn't you?
Yes.
And you've examined that in the transcript, haven't you?
Yes.
And you know it's been played on video to the jury. The word them is clear.
Yes.
Was that a slip of the tongue?
No.
It was not. Okay. Now, when Detective Van Adder came, you're off the case.
Yes.
What did you do?
I waited for direction from Detective Phillips.
You don't speak to Van Adder, only through Phillips?
Well, Detective Phillips is my boss. If
I
we're going to
understand
be,
that.
if we're going to be relieved,
Mr. Bailey, let him finish the answer.
Sorry.
if we're going to be relieved, I'll be relieved by Detective Phillips as far as where I'm going to go at that point.
Okay. Was there some discussion about what you fellas, Detectives Phillips and Furman, should do?
Yes.
Okay. And what were you directed to do?
At that time from Detective Van Adder?
Yeah.
I had no knowledge of what we were directed to do.
Or what did you in fact do?
Well, at some point, we led Detective Van Adder and Lang to the Rockingham estate.
You say at some point. Can you help us a little better than that? We're talking 4:05 now when Detective Lang arrived.
Yes, sir.
Van Adder, I'm sorry.
Do you want a time, what time we did that?
Now, can you tell us how long you stayed at Bundy with Detective Van Adder before you went to Rockingham?
Yeah, Detective Van Adder got there at, as you said, 4:05. Detective Lang, 4:25. And at 5 o'clock, we left for Rockingham.
Now, when you went to Rockingham, how were you paired?
Detective Phillips and I were in a vehicle. He was driving. Lang and Van Adder were in their vehicle.
Do you know a photographer named Rokar?
Yes, sir.
Did you see him arrive on the scene at 3:25 that day?
Yes, I recall he was there fairly early.
Did you observe him taking any photographs?
Yes, I think he was taking photographs of some of the intersections.
Did you give him any direction with respect to photographs that needed to be taken?
No, I didn't.
Did you have any conversation with him at all?
No, I don't believe I did.
When you left for Rockingham, did he go with you?
No.
He did not?
No.
Was there anyone with you other than the four detectives initially?
No.
Did others come after you arrived and before you entered the property?
I believe there was a uniformed vehicle, police vehicle, that arrived just as we had already made entry, and they stayed at the front gate.
Okay. And is this during the time when you were looking for West Tech, or was that after you failed to gain entrance by punching the button on the intercom?
You mean when the police vehicle arrived?
No. When the calls were being made through Rossi, I believe, to West Tech by Phillips. Did that happen after you had failed to gain entrance in the routine way?
I believe you're asking, could you ask that question?
Withdraw the question. Did anyone peer through the gate to see if there was anybody inside on the premises, if you can recall, any of the four of you?
You could just see right through the gate. You didn't need to peer.
But did anybody go up and take a look, if you know?
We were standing in front of the gate.
All of you.
Yes.
You had a fairly sweeping view of the interior of the walls.
You mean of the driveway, sir? Yes, looking south.
Were you wearing a sidearm that night?
Yes.
Did you withdraw it at any time?
No.
During the entire night?
I could have on the pathway, but I don't have any recollection if I did or I didn't.
Well, you've never mentioned drawing your sidearm up to this point in your prior testimony, have you?
No.
Do you have any recollection now as you sit there that you drew a sidearm?
I can't remember if I did or I had my hand on it, but no, I can't.
You just don't have a memory about that. True?
That's correct.
Okay. Did anybody direct you to go down and look at the Bronco?
No.
That was something you decided to do on your own?
Yes, sir.
And that's a car that you had seen as you drove by it, approaching Rockingham, traveling north, coming up from Sunset?
Yes.
Had you any reason as you passed by it to associate it with Mr. Simpson? Just
No.
based on looking at it?
No.
Had you noticed that there were vehicles parked inside the surround, that is, inside the fence enclosure?
Yes, I noticed vehicles inside.
And had you been able to identify them in the light that was available at the time?
I didn't know what the large luxury vehicle was, but I could tell by the lines of the one vehicle it was a Saab.
Okay. And you didn't know whether the large vehicle was, did it look foreign made?
Yes, it was a
Did it look
foreign make.
expensive?
Yes.
Okay. When you walked down to the Bronco, did you ask permission from Lieutenant Van Adder before you did that?
Detective Van Adder? No.
I'm sorry, Detective Van Adder. Detective Phillips?
No.
Detective Lang?
No.
This was on your own initiative,
Yes.
and you were detecting. At this point, I take it.
I'm sorry?
You were detecting.
I was detecting.
You had been frozen in your function by the notice of dismissal, but now you are back again detecting. True?
No, at that point I wasn't detecting. I was just walking.
You weren't just being nosy, were you?
I don't think nosy. I was walking and I noticed something on the Bronco and I continued walking towards it.
Well, was this a walk that you took to get some exercise and just happened to take you by the Bronco? Is that what happened?
It wasn't a walk for exercise. I just walked down to the corner and looked down Rockingham, saw the Bronco.
Was it a walk specifically to inspect the Bronco for some purpose, Detective Furman?
No.
Was it?
No.
Is it simply that you were in its vicinity and decided to look around once you got there?
I was walking down towards the Rockingham gate. As I walked towards the Bronco, I noticed a few things.
While you were walking toward the Rockingham gate, were you going to try to get in that gate?
No.
Had you examined it to see if access was possible?
I don't think access was on my mind at that point.
Had anybody directed you to check out the Rockingham gate to see if
No.
you could get in?
No.
And as you walked by the Bronco on the street side, toward the center of the street, how light was it at that moment?
It was getting light, but it wasn't completely dawn yet.
Can you help us as to what time it may have been when you walked by the Bronco? Time of day?
5:20, 5:25.
And you think that the dawn was beginning to come, some natural light was on the scene at the time?
Maybe somewhat, yes.
Well, you weren't able to see into the Bronco without your flashlight, you told us.
That's correct.
Had you been wandering down the street with that little bitty flashlight on, just kind of pointing out to the side?
No.
Did something cause you to stop and turn your flashlight on to inspect the Bronco?
Yes.
What was that?
A little speck above the door handle on the driver's side.
Is that something that caught your eye or something that you discovered by inspection?
I think it's something that caught my eye.
And at that point, you turn on your flashlight to take a closer look.
Yes, then I inspected.
And after you see that, you look further, correct?
Yes.
And you see some additional evidences that you think might be blood.
Yes.
Would you describe once again what it was that you saw and where you saw it? Not the one above the driver's door handle, but elsewhere.
In the door sill of the driver's door, directly below the door, visible from the outside on the edge of the door sill, 3 or 4 little marks, little lines, translucent red.
And to whom, other than the detectives, did you direct attention as to these little marks?
Who did I show those marks to?
Yeah.
Dennis Fung, the criminalist.
Okay. Did you recommend to him that they would be worth photographing?
I made no recommendations.
Did you ever see a photographer at Rockingham?
Yes.
Who was that?
I saw Mr. Rokar there.
When?
He came back up with me after I returned to the Bundy scene. So that would have been sometime after 7:30.
Did you ever speak to him about photographs?
No.
Do you know if there is anywhere today a photograph of what you say you saw on the lower part of the Bronco below the door?
I have not seen a photograph.
Now, was that Bronco locked, Detective Furman?
I did not try to open the door.
Ever?
No.
Never touched the door handle that whole day, the 13th?
I did not.
Or any part of the car?
I laid the back of my palm on the hood of the car to see if the vehicle was warm. Yes, sir.
Taking its temperature?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Other than that, no.
Well, you touched the vehicle when you cupped your flashlight in order to see in through the tinted window you've described?
No.
You didn't touch it?
No.
You simply came close?
I tried to cup the light so I could get a view inside.
Okay. And you then brought to the attention of the other detectives, at least, I believe, Tom Lang, the fact that you had made this observation.
Yes.
Did you show it to anyone else?
Detective Van Adder and Detective Lang, and I believe Detective Phillips came down at some point, but I'm not sure when.
Okay. And that was as a result of your returning to the Ashford Gate, mentioning what you had seen, and them walking back with you to the Bronco.
I'm not sure I walked all the way back to the Ashford Gate. I think I walked to the intersection of Ashford and Rockingham and motioned.
Okay. But then you went back with them
Yes,
to
sir.
point out with your flashlight what you thought you had seen.
Yes.
Did you also show them the interior with the shovel and the plastic?
Yes, I'm not sure how well they saw it, but I showed them the best I could, yes.
All right. What significance did you draw at that time from the presence of the shovel and the Bronco?
Well, I didn't know. I had no idea what that shovel meant.
And you didn't know what the plastic meant?
No.
Because you didn't know then and didn't know until Saturday that it came with the car, right?
That's true.
Okay. Is it fair to say that it was not an important matter that was discussed by you fellas, the presence of the shovel?
I don't know if it could be on its own. It could be important. Collectively, it could have some impact.
Whose idea was it to go to Rockingham, if you know?
Commander Bushy, I believe.
Okay. And how was that conveyed to you? You didn't speak to the commander, did you?
No, Detective Phillips did.
Okay. And how did you learn that you were going to Rockingham?
I was told when I came back from talking to Officer Risky, get in the car.
Just said, get in the car?
Yeah, well, Ron said, let's go, and I heard Detective Lang and Van Adder, I believe it was Detective Lang, said, Ron, Mark, let's go. Ron said, let's go. I got into the car, and then he told me when we were in the vehicle.
Mm-hmm. What did he tell you?
He said we were going to go make a notification, take us up to the Rockingham house.
Had you talked with anyone on the scene that night, anyone at all, about your prior experiences in the Simpson matter, in 85 and 89, either or both?
Yes, the 85 incident.
To whom did you convey that?
When Detective Phillips was on the phone, he broke away, it appeared to be in mid-conversation, and asked if I knew how to get up to the Simpson house on Rockingham.
Okay, back up a minute if we can. Detective Phillips is now on the phone at about 5 o'clock.
I think it was a little before that.
Cellular phone?
Yes.
Okay. And so someone is discussing something with him that causes him to ask you if you know your way to Rockingham?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you tell him at that time? That you'd been there once before?
I was there on a family dispute a long time ago, and yeah, I probably could get up there.
And what were you told by Detective Phillips was the purpose in the trip to Rockingham?
When we got in the vehicle, he told me it was to make a notification.
Mm-hmm. Now, were you looking as you proceeded with the case, and I take it at this point you were sort of back in the case? Was that your understanding?
No.
Well, did you know that Detective Van Adder said on July 6th that you were in the case always, up to and including that day?
Well, I think in my mind, I know Detective Phillips, and he's going to render any assistance to robbery homicide he can until they want us relieved, and that's exactly what I thought we were doing.
All right. Well, were you on active duty, so to speak?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you know that what the purpose was of going to Rockingham?
When I got in the vehicle, I did, yes.
Was it to look for victims or suspects or anything of that sort?
No, to my knowledge, it was a notification.
Had anyone determined, as of that point, whether Mr. Simpson was in town?
No.
Was the fact that he traveled a great deal ever discussed by the detectives before you went up there?
I don't think anybody would have known that. I didn't hear anything.
Okay. Now, at some point you've told us you became sufficiently concerned that you and your colleagues decided it was necessary to forcibly enter the premises by climbing over the wall, right?
Yes.
And that was because of some concern on your part that there might be suspects or victims on the premises, somebody in need of help.
That's correct.
Is that so?
Yes, sir.
You went to the front door and couldn't raise anyone, correct?
Are you talking about after
Yes, after
we entered?
you all got inside,
Yes, sir.
and then walked around on the north path to what turned out to be the bungalow room belonging to Cato Kalin.
That's correct.
When the others went to talk to Arnell, you remained behind.
Yes.
Were you concerned about who Kalin was?
Yes.
Were you concerned about whether he had the right to be there?
He appeared it just appeared that he had the right to be there. I just didn't know who he was.
Well, was he a suspect at that point?
I think he was not a suspect, but we didn't know anything about him at that point.
Okay. Why did you give him a sobriety test?
To make sure he wasn't under the influence of alcohol.
And why were you concerned about that?
His eyes were just really bloodshot and glassy, and he was all...
But if he'd been under the influence of alcohol, I'm sorry.
Let him finish.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure that he wasn't under the influence.
All right. And if he had been, what were you going to do then?
Well, I don't know, sir. I probably wouldn't have interviewed him right then. Or maybe I would have taken him inside. I don't know.
You looked around the premises
Yes.
where he was.
Yes.
And meanwhile, the others, to your knowledge, had left and gone into the main house?
I didn't know where they were.
Well, they weren't with Arnell anymore when you came out, were they?
Well, when I came out, I looked to my right, I didn't see him, so I looked to my left and I saw an open door.
Cato went with you into the main house,
Yes.
and as you passed by the kitchen, you had already seated him in the bar stool,
Yes, sir.
and you saw Phillips on the phone.
Yes.
Did you know he was talking to Mr. Simpson?
I didn't know who he was talking to, sir.
Did you inquire of any of these fellows as to what Mr. Phillips was doing?
No.
All right. Did you see Detective Lang comforting Arnell?
No.
What did you see him doing? Did you see him in the room?
I believe he was in the room, but I saw Detective Van Adder. That's who I focused on.
Did you see Arnell in the room, Mr. Simpson's daughter?
I believe that she was, but I'm not positive.
All right. Now, had you interrogated Cato in his room about what he might know that could help you with the solution of this crime?
I asked him a few questions. They weren't directly crime scene questions, no.
Well, you had been trained to interrogate people, hadn't you?
Yes.
And you had interrogated many suspects in your career, had you not?
Yes.
An interrogation is an important part of police procedure.
Yes, sir.
Were you questioning him with a view toward learning something that might be important in the case?
Could be, yes.
Looking for some little slip of the tongue he might make that could be significant?
I didn't know what we were looking for, sir.
You didn't know what you were looking
No.
for. But you did question Cato for a time, and then you came out to the kitchen, seated him in a bar stool, and said to Detective Van Adder, you ought to go talk to him.
Yes.
Why did you think that Detective Van Adder, your superior, should be directed to go talk to Cato Kalin on a bar stool?
Well, he could take that interview and put it to a formal interview on paper where
You couldn't do that?
I shouldn't at that point unless I'm directed to by Detective Van Adder.
Okay. But instead you directed him, it sounds like.
I didn't direct him. I just said, you might want to talk to this guy at the bar, or talk to this guy at the bar, something along
What
that
was
line.
Detective Lang doing at this point? Was he tied up doing anything, if you know?
I didn't see, he wasn't in the forefront of the kitchen. Detective Van Adder was. I saw him first.
Now, you then walked out the front door.
Yes.
You had no direction from anyone to do that, did you?
No, I didn't.
This, again, was Detective Furman on his own, was it not?
Yes.
You had an idea that you would like to check out Cato's claim that some unusual noise had occurred at about 11:15 that night on the outside of the wall of Cato Kalin's room.
That's correct.
Did Cato tell you, by the way, that O.J. had left for the airport in the limo he had seen when he came out that night after hearing the noise at around 11 p.m.?
No.
Did you ever ask him what a limo was doing there at 11 p.m.?
No, I cut his conversation off and brought him into the house.
As a matter of fact, you asked him if he'd heard anything unusual, and then you cut him off and said, who drives that Bronco, didn't you?
I believe I did.
Why'd you cut him off?
I don't know, sir.
You interrupted an answer to get a different answer. Was that an important question? Who drives that Bronco?
No, he answered that question. He answered that
I
question.
know that. In order to get that answer, you cut him off from answering the previous question, which was, did something unusual happen tonight, or anything unusual? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Why was who drives the Bronco so important as to interrupt a witness?
I can't give any reason why it went down like.
All right, so you asked no questions about him having seen Mr. Simpson that night or at any given time?
No, he'd been previously asked about if he knew Mr. Simpson was in the house, and he said he did not.
No, but then he told you, Detective Furman, as I understand it, that he had been awakened or had his attention drawn as he was talking on the phone to someone by a strange noise, a picture that shuddered, something you say sounded like crashing into a wall, and that he then went outside and saw a limousine there at about 11 o'clock. Isn't that what he told you?
Something to that effect, yes.
And you didn't ask him why the limousine was there?
No.
And you didn't ask him if Mr. Simpson had been the one using the limousine?
No, I didn't.
Cato Kalin didn't look to you like a fellow who rode around in limousines, did he? Did he?
In this area of Los Angeles, I don't think you could say that.
You think maybe he ordered the limousine and then somehow stayed behind, is that it?
I had no idea, sir.
He didn't tell you anything about using it, did he?
The limousine?
Yeah.
No, he didn't.
Now, was it for the purpose of discovering why the limousine was there that you asked Van Adder to talk to him?
No, I wanted Van Adder to talk to Cato about everything that he saw and heard.
Detective Furman, were you not concerned that on the premises there might be suspects that night? Violent, vicious people?
I think I was leaning more towards another victim than I was a suspect.
Have you not testified that you were concerned that there were suspects there that night?
I said victims. I preface it with victims,
Have you not
possibility of
testified
suspect.
that you were concerned that there were suspects?
Mr. Bailey, he was still answering the question.
I'm sorry.
I preface that with my first concern was victims, hostage, possible suspect.
What
Yes.
did you mean earlier today when you said, I didn't want my back turned to the other end of the alley?
Once I found a glove,
Okay.
that pivoted towards more suspect than victim.
Now, Detective Furman, you went out there in the alley where you'd never been before, did you not?
What alley, sir?
Along the chain-link fence where Cato said he heard a noise. Did you not?
Yes, I went in that pathway.
You walked there by yourself, correct?
Yes,
You were wearing no bulletproof vest, correct?
that's correct.
You had 3 detectives who were armed in the house and didn't tell any of them where you were going, correct?
That's correct.
You didn't ask any of them to come with you to cover for you, correct?
That's correct.
You had previously stated there was a possibility that dangerous people were on the premises, had you not?
I never used those words.
When you went back to the location where Cato said he heard the noise, you were about 230 feet from the Bronco, weren't you?
I don't know the distance, sir.
You can walk that in a minute, can't you? 235 feet. Can
Yes,
you
sir.
walk that in a minute?
Yes, sir.
Did you know at that time there was blood in the Bronco?
No.
Have you ever testified that there was blood in the Bronco?
I'm not sure if we testified to that in the prelim or not.
Did you wipe a glove in the Bronco, Detective Furman?
No.
You did not.
No.
When you went out to where the glove was eventually pointed out to the other detectives, how long did you spend there before you went back to talk to them?
10, 15 minutes, totally.
What did you do for 10 to 15 minutes
Look for
on that scene?
Look for a victim or a suspect.
You looked for a victim or suspect.
Yes.
You didn't draw your gun. Correct.
I told you I don't know, sir.
Well, if you'd drawn your weapon and were afraid, you'd remember that, wouldn't you, Detective?
Sir, after 20 years, you draw that weapon
Did
unconsciously.
you draw it, if you remember?
Your Honor, can the witness be allowed to finish his
I thought he had. Do you have something more to add?
Yes, I do, sir.
Okay. What is it?
After 20 years, you draw that weapon, you lay it down to the side of your leg, you walk, you don't even know you're doing it.
Did you walk back into an area where you knew no one else had been because there were cobwebs there?
No, I testified I didn't know if anybody had been back there walking upright. I didn't know if somebody had crawled or...
Are you now
What had
saying there were no
transpired.
cobwebs down low?
I didn't go down low, sir. I was upright.
You only felt them in your face?
Yes.
All right. You don't recall whether you had your weapon at the ready or whether it was holstered or some other place?
It was not at the ready.
You know that you were not equipped with any protective gear, correct?
I was not.
Now, if that glove had been there where you say you found it, it would have been placed there by someone involved in the homicide. Isn't that conclusion compelled?
I would assume that, yes.
That would be a vicious killer of some sort, would it not?
Yes.
And you hung around for 15 minutes with no backup and no vest doing something. Is
No,
that correct?
No, it isn't.
Has anyone, to your knowledge, seen that glove there before your arrival?
Not to my knowledge.
Would you think it important that if the glove were in that location, the likelihood was that someone had placed it there who had been at Bundy?
Yes.
And that someone, if it were a human being, would have to have gotten to the spot or near it and gotten away. True?
Yes.
Did you examine the shrubbery to see if anyone had come over that fence that might have crashed the wall or dropped the glove?
That was part of the period of time that I spent back there looking for those type of items, yes.
And did you not satisfy yourself there was no damage to twig or leaf that would have permitted an adult to come over that fence at or near that spot?
It was pretty overgrown. It'd be hard to tell what transpired there.
Did it not seem likely that whoever placed that glove there, Detective Phillips, had walked back out the alley over the leaves?
Excuse me, Detective Phillips or Detective Furman?
I'm sorry, Detective Furman. Over the leaves.
Yes.
And their tracks might still have been there when you made that discovery, correct?
I didn't see anything, but they could have been.
And you could have taken the detectives on the outside of the fence and shown the flashlight through it to point out the glove if you had chosen, could you not?
No, I think that would have been very difficult.
Did it occur to you that there might be footprints there if in fact someone had placed the glove and walked out the alley?
Objection, that is these facts on evidence placed.
Sustained.
Did you think that whoever had dropped that glove might have left footprints?
I did not see any evidence of that, no.
Footprints that were latent, not discernible. Did you think that there might be footprints there that a criminalist could find that might shed light on how the glove got there?
Speculation, objection.
Overruled. Did you consider that?
I'm sorry, Your Honor?
Did you consider that?
Not at that point, no.
You did not?
No.
Did you then cause 18 pairs of feet to trample that area before any criminalist could get to it?
18 pairs of
18
feet?
pairs of feet. 2 Furman, 4 Furman and Phillips, 4 Furman and Van Adder, 4 Furman and Lang, and 4 Furman and Rokar. Did you do that?
Yes, sir.
Detective Furman, can you tell us why, when you were talking with Cato Kalin in his room, you asked him where you could find the keys to the Bronco?
I never asked him that.
You're quite sure?
I'm absolutely sure.
Thank you. It's 3 o'clock, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the afternoon at this time. Please remember my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Form any opinions about the case. Don't conduct any deliberations till the matter has been submitted to you. Do not allow anybody to communicate with you regarding the case. We'll stand in recess as far as the jury is concerned until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Detective Furman, good evening. You're ordered to be back here tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, we'll stand in recess.